see me okay?
I can see you. Yeah, I can see the hairs in your nose.
All right, we're almost live streaming again.
Okay.
Well, Sean's having problems. All right, let's get started. Feel free, Ms. Moderator.
Okay, let me make sure this goes on. The March 25th, 2021 meeting of the Yarmouth Zoning Board of Appeals is about to convene. As a precautionary measure to reduce the spread of the coronavirus, this meeting will be held by remote participation. My name is Dawn Marie Flett, and I will be serving as moderator for this virtual meeting. I will now turn it over to the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Moderator. My name is Steve DeYoung. I'm the chairman of this board, and delightedly so. The meeting before us today is being conducted in conformity with the governor's rules and regulations. I will begin by calling a roll call for quorum. Mr. Martin.
Here.
Mr. Barron.
Present.
Mr. Igo.
Present.
And myself, Steve DeYoung, that 4 members. It does constitute a quorum. I want to tell every petitioner here that in the past, if a petitioner said they didn't want to go forward with a 4-member board and they want to go forward with a 5-member board, we've tried to accommodate that by agreeing to continue matters. So all you petitioners that are considering this matter, please take that into your thought process as we're going forward tonight. Thank you, Ms. Moderator. Back to you.
Okay, pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, this meeting of the Yarmouth Zoning Board of Appeals is being conducted via remote participation. Although no in-person attendance will be permitted, every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access and participate in the proceedings. Persons who would like to view this meeting while in progress may do so by watching via this virtual meeting or the live feed on the Town of Yarmouth YouTube channel. You may also listen to the meeting by dialing in to the number provided on the notice of meeting. The recording of the meeting will also be available on the Town of Yarmouth YouTube channel for future viewing. Please be patient as we work to overcome any technological challenges with the virtual meeting. For all meetings, all audience participants will enter the virtual meeting muted. Participants will be unmuted when called upon to speak by the chair or moderator. All votes must be roll call votes. If you are not speaking, please mute yourself to avoid unnecessary background noises. Do not use speakerphone or Bluetooth devices when speaking. For applicants and presenters, applicants can use the raise hand button or press *9 on their phone to identify themselves to the chair. The moderator will unmute applicants when they are called upon to speak during their portion of the agenda. Applications or presentations provided by the applicant will be displayed in the virtual meeting by the moderator and advanced by the moderator. Or if pre-approved for larger projects, temporary panelist capabilities may be given to presenters to share their screens while giving their presentation. All presenters and speakers need to identify themselves by first and last name and affiliation when speaking. For public hearings, during the portion of the hearing designated for public comment, the chair will ask who in the audience has any public comments or questions. Members of the public may speak by selecting the raise hand button or pressing *9 on their phone and waiting for the chair to call on them to speak. Members of the public recognized by the chair are asked to identify themselves by first and last name and affiliation for the public record and then to provide their comment. Prior to concluding opportunities for public comment, the chair will ask one last time if anyone wishes to speak or give additional comment. I will now hand the meeting back to the board.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Moderator. There are 5 matters on our agenda this evening. The first is a matter continued from our last meeting. That is Paula A. Quigley of 48 Eileen Street, Yarmouthport, Mass. Property located in the zoning district R40. Our applicant this evening is seeking a special permit under zoning bylaw 407 to allow a family-related apartment in her primary dwelling. Do we have a petitioner representative here?
My understanding, Mr. Chairman, is they may have requested a continuance on this. I thought I saw some correspondence relative to that.
Well, I don't have any new correspondence, and I'm looking at the agenda saying it was continued for March 11th. It's fine by me if they want. Does anybody have any correspondence saying?
I don't know. Is anybody here on that petition? I thought I saw that in an email.
I am looking at an email right now. Where did it go? That she is trying to log onto the Zoom hearing, but it's asking for a screen name. Okay.
Well, we'll give her a minute, and if she can't do it, then we'll put her on the back of the list instead of the first, while she tries to iron out her difficulties.
I will respond to her email.
God knows I have enough difficulties that I got to respond to, so maybe she can respond to hers. How does it look, Ms. Moderator? You think we're going to get her on?
Let's see. Oh, no, that's me. I don't see anything going on over in our participants column.
Okay, well, why don't you let us know when she does check in, and we'll therefore go to the next petition. That is petition number 4890, Michael J. Lindsay Sr. and Sandra M. Lindsay, trustees of the 8 Grove Street Realty Trust, concerning property located at 8 Grove Street, West Yarmouth, Mass. That property is in an R25 zoning district, and tonight our applicant is seeking a special permit under zoning bylaw 104.3.2 to raise and replace a single-family dwelling. Who's appearing on behalf of the petitioner, if anyone? Someone here on behalf of the petitioner?
Yeah, I'm promoting Paul Tardif.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah.
You're okay to go, Paul.
Good evening,
Okay.
Mr. Tardif.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. How are you?
Fine, thank you. And we're talking about petition 4890, please.
Okay. For the record, I am Paul Tardif. I'm an attorney in Yarmouthport, and I represent the petitioners Michael and Sandra Lindsay, trustees of the 8 Grove Street Realty Trust. I believe they're on the line, as is Kieran Healy from the BSC Group. So if the moderator could let them in case, that'd be great. As you indicated, we are seeking a special permit.
Well, hold on. Ms. Moderator, please promote them to the meeting. Thank you. I'm sorry,
you.
Mr. Tardif.
No, that's fine. As you indicated, we are seeking a special permit pursuant to 104.3.2 of the bylaw to allow for the raising and replacing of a single-family dwelling at that property. The property is in the R25 zoning district and currently is improved with a 2-story single-family structure with 4 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, constructed in approximately 1927, and it also has a detached garage. The lot itself contains 44,159 square feet of area, but the upland calculation is that 20,134 square feet of upland. The lot is a very odd shape, as you can see on the plan. It runs all the way from the beach on the south and up to Park Ave on the north. And it's surrounded by salt marshes, a dune, and considered to be a river. A portion of the lot is in the velocity zone, and a portion is also in the AE11 flood zone. The house that sits there currently is approximately 6 inches from Grove Street, but complies with all the other setback and height regulations of the bylaw. There is a Title V septic system on the property that is capable of handling up to 5 bedrooms, and that system is going to remain. The lot coverage, including the house, the garage, and all decks, total 11.9% of the upland. Proposal tonight is to remove that house and the garage from their present location and to construct a 2.5-story single-family dwelling, having 5 bedrooms with decks and a swimming pool. The house will be located 7.7 feet away from Grove Street, so move back a little bit. There is also a covered entry porch, which will be 2.2 feet from the street. Due to the environmental issues as shown on that plan you're looking at, there really was no other reasonable place to locate the house. Because it is in a flood zone, the basement is going to have flood vents and will be used for parking and storage, but no mechanicals or living space will be located on that level. The building coverage will actually increase by a total of 73 square feet. And the increase in the percentage of the lot coverage will go to 12.3%. A number of plantings, as you can see, will be included around the perimeter of the property near the wetlands. And this plan has already been approved by the Conservation Commission. The height of the new structure will be 34.5 feet. The calculation for the height is on the plan. And this property will comply with the height requirements for this bylaw. Under 104.3.2, a single family structure such as this may be raised and replaced, and a special permit issued by the Board of Appeals if it's determined that the raise and replacement will not be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than is the existing non-conforming structure. Well, first of all, you have plans for the elevations and the floor plan. The design, as you can see, is attractive, fitting with the changing neighborhood. We're doing a lot of zoning hearings down here lately. This is going to fit right in with those properties, along with all the other properties that have already done this. The only encroaching portion of the house will be in the front yard on Grove Street, which is really a side street. The Title V septic will be utilized, and the entire plan was designed basically to address and protect the environmental situation from its position on the lot to the flood compliant basement. I did have some discussions with a neighbor who was a little concerned about the use of the property. The property actually will be used for single family residential purposes only and will not be used for any commercial events or for profit. The owner and the occupants of the property will not park or store any commercial vehicles on the property except during construction or as an invited guest on the property. The project is absolutely not more detrimental to the neighborhood. In fact, it's going to be beneficial to the neighborhood. So I'm going to leave it at that and open it up for questions if you have any, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I wonder if we could take down the plan we're looking at. Thank you. So, Mr. Tardif, as you know, the procedure is that we have board members ask questions of the petitioner before we move it on to public commentary. So, Mr. Martin, do you have any questions of the petitioner?
Well, it's a big house. It's a tall house. I know that a number of the neighbors have issues with it. But the loft plan, is that what we call the third floor?
Yeah, the habitable attic.
Yeah.
Yes.
Those are allowed to have bedrooms? I didn't think they were allowed to have bedrooms.
Yeah.
They are?
Yeah. Just it's as long as there's a sloped roof above it, the habitable attic is allowed.
I knew it could be habitable. I didn't think bedrooms are allowed, but yeah, you're probably right. I'm sure you're right. All right. So there's a 3-car garage under on the bay side, apparently, right?
Well, it's actually, I mean, there are three garage doors. 2 are going to be accessed by vehicles. 1, really, you can't get the car in there because of the way the driveway is configured. So it's more for storage. But yeah, there is a garage door on it, so it does appear that way. Yes.
All right. And so the existing house is pretty much right on the street line. We're moving it back. What was it? Just was I seeing 2.2 feet or something?
Well, 2.2 feet is to the covered stairs. The house itself is 7.7 feet away from the road.
Do we need to have the covered stairs? I mean,
I don't know if it's needed, but
you know, we're dealing with what should be a 30-foot setback, and we're really at 2 feet. Now, I know what's there is there, and it's very close, and but usually under these circumstances, and I know there's all these conservation issues here relevant to how far they can go back, but I'm concerned, normally we'd be looking for much more conformity in terms of a new house from scratch here, that it would be at least closer to conformity to the street setback. But had that been broached with conservation at all, or they've let you go as close to the marsh as they want to, I take it?
Yeah, they've approved this plan. We can't move the house back any further, but again, the house is 7.7 feet away from the road. It's only the stairs that are really bringing the 2.2 in.
And I know
I guess we could inquire about the covering coming off. If, it doesn't change really much about the house, except there's no roof on it over the stairs. That's all.
My concern, and maybe that'll come up later more, but my concern is it's a very tall house, very close to the street. And it's a beautiful house. It's a great house. And if there was more land to work with, I'd be very comfortable with it. But to put that tall a house that close to the street, I'm having a little concern. I'm not saying no, but I'm saying it's
Right.
I guess that's all I have for real questions anyways, and comments for the moment.
Thank you, Mr. Martin.
Yep.
Mr. Barron, please.
The lot is a large lot, but it's unfortunately constrained by the tidal stream and the marsh. My concern is that if it is a raise and replace under the bylaw, but with a retaining wall to the west side, why the building couldn't have been moved closer to a retaining wall and away from Grove Street? It begs the question. I echo Mr. Martin's comment. It's going to be a large house in the proposed configuration. There have been other developments, other properties in the general neighborhood of Grove Street and Glenwood Ave nearby that have gone from smaller structures to larger structures. This does seem to be in that same trend, and other than the closeness to Grove Street, at this time I have no further questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barron. Mr. Igo, please.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Attorney Tardif. Can you tell me what the height of the house is from Grove Street to the top of the roof?
The proposed?
Yes,
Oh.
the elevation at Grove Street presently and the elevation of the top of the ridge.
Yep, elevation, average grade at elevation, of elevation is 12.2. That's at the street. And then 34.5 on top, so total of 46.7. Which is under the 35-foot requirement.
So is this going to be built up on stilts? Is this built up? It is, right? No?
Well, no, the basement is there is gonna be a basement for parking and storage only with, flood vents, because it's got to get out of the flood zone. We're in A11 there.
So, okay, so when you say from Grove Street, from the average grade, what are you showing for the average grade on Grove Street? When you say 12, Is that in where the center of the house is gonna be at 12?
It's
On the
that
road?
section where, yeah, it's the section where the house is. And, you know, Mr. Healy's available. If you want to ask him, he can probably give you a little bit more detail. It's up to you.
Mhm. Okay, so, yeah, if I could just ask Kieran a couple of questions.
Can you hear me, Mr. Igo?
I can, Kieran, thank you. And good evening. What is the top of the foundation? What's the difference in the top of the foundation from the street? How tall is it from the street to the top of the foundation? How far are you going up?
The top of the foundation is only a couple of feet above the street level. You
It
can
is.
drive on underneath, but you can see from the plan, but kind of driving around from the low spot and going in underneath. I checked with Mr. Grills, the building inspector, just to confirm the location of the street elevation. And he basically told me to take two perpendicular lines from either side of the building and run them out to the street level. And that would be the average of those 2 points would be the average grade for the building. And then we're 34.5 feet above that point.
Okay. All right, and the covered stairs, I don't know, that's all I really had right now. Thank you, Kieran. On the covered stairs, that's just, I guess I'm a little concerned like Dick is, where you're building so close to the road. I mean, is there some way we could eliminate those covered stairs?
Hey, yeah, I mean, we could inquire. I know Mr. Lindsay's on the call. Could make that call.
Okay, I think that's a bit of a, because it is a bit close to the road. I am in agreement that you're moving it back. I mean, it's 6 inches. I guess you really have no way to go but back or straight up, I suppose. But
Okay.
you certainly done some mitigation there. But as far back as we could get it to not give it that towering look over Grove Street. I'm just wondering if the petitioner could live without that.
If he can, if he gets on the call, I'm sure that he can answer that question for you. It might take a minute for him to get
Okay.
unmuted. Yeah,
Can you hear me now, Paul?
I can hear you.
Okay, I'm here. I was trying to get my picture on here, but that was a challenge, but I can hear everything that's going on, if you can hear me.
Yeah, just tell us who you are.
This is Michael Lindsay, the owner of the property at 8 Grove Street.
Okay. And I guess my question is, there seems to be some concern about the covered stairs and how close that'll be to the road. Could we eliminate the covered stairs?
Yeah, I don't see a problem with doing that. I think that, you know, as proposed, if there's something that we need to do to modify this project, then we're willing to work with the board, absolutely. And
Okay, all right. Thank you. That's all I had.
okay.
Okay, I have a few. My understanding of it is the foundation's at about 2.8 feet. Is that right, Karen?
About that, yes, Mr. DeYoung.
Okay. You know, the interesting thing about this location is that the Grove Street layout is not the true layout on the ground. You know, there's a good portion of that that causes this to be 2.6 feet away from what's vegetated area. So, you know, as a practical matter, that can weigh in on the decision, even though there is a continuing nonconformity. And as you know, Mr. Tardif, we always like to see a reduction in nonconformity when we're confronted with these. And I find it amazing that to the property line, I appreciate that it was built back in the 20s, but to the property line, it's 6 inches off the road layout.
Yeah.
The road layout came after the house, I'm assuming, but yeah, how they allowed that, I'm not sure. Like the other members, I'm looking at the floor plan. I know that the existing suggestion, the site of the suggested covered porch, or stairs rather, feeds right into the living room. On the other side, it appears that it could be brought up to either of the proposed, utilize the stairs on the proposed deck on the easterly side, westerly side rather, excuse me, or perhaps run some stairs up and into the kitchen area, which is on the other side of the house.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask you a question? I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, sure.
I thought we were just going to be removing the cover off of that because then it's not considered, the measurement is not from the boundary line to the stairs because they're not covered anymore. But if you're proposing to move them all together, that's probably the best way to get into the house would be either up to that deck on the south side or something like that. So is that what we're talking about, is removing stairs altogether?
That's what I thought. And that's what I would want to see. I do have to ask, suggest to you that we ask your client though, because I'm not sure if he misunderstood what I had understood it to be. So if he could unmute himself, perhaps, Mr. Lindsay.
Yes, Mr. Dion. Yeah.
Yes, we're talking about eliminating those steps in front altogether and making another main entrance into your home. I suppose you could do it right on the steps you're showing on the proposed deck, 23-foot deck, and that runs right in the line of the front line of the house. That would be your call, of course, but did you understand that we were asking, considering a removal of the stairs entirely or just the covered aspect?
I thought it was just the cover, but again, you know, any of these plans can be modified. And, you know, if that's a deal breaker, we can certainly relocate an entrance or an exit to whatever is appropriate.
Well, you know, what we're looking for is a reduction. You're looking for an awfully large house. You have the right to do it. If I could just speak for a minute, Tom, you have the right to do it. That's all well and good, but when we can reduce nonconformity, that's our charge. And so going to 2.2 feet from 6 inches does not seem to me to be a significant change in the encroachment of the front yard. I would like to see it be those stairs removed altogether. Relative to the height, I think we meet the height requirements. Relative to lot coverage, certainly well in there. I don't know what it is we could argue about the height of the home. I am surprised that, Mr. Todd, if you can tell us that third floor may be bedrooms. I thought we addressed this issue in this general neighborhood before and had a problem with the bedrooms on the third floor. Is there any prohibition you're aware of that says we can't have habitable space on a third floor of a residence?
No, my understanding is that the purpose of first of all, that the bylaw allows up to 3 floors of habitable space, with the third one being what they call a habitable attic. As long as the height is at least, I think it's 7 feet above the finished floor and not more than 50% of the level below. I think there's some regulations with regard to that, but I think that you can have living space in there. That's the whole purpose.
All right. Now, Tom, you had your hand raised. Tom?
Just a point of observation, the question about the covered steps, that porch is also very close to the parking area on the upper level, not the garage under. That parking area directly off Grove Street, it gives an opportunity to go directly onto that porch instead of having stairs poke out into the street or toward the street. So my suggestion is that remove the steps adjacent to Grove Street and provide access off of that parking area.
All right, and I understand that as we're considering and deliberating on the facts that they're coming in, that the petitioner has offered to have as a condition that this home would be used for single-family use only.
That's right, single family, and not for commercial events.
No events. Okay. Commercial
Meaning
event.
weddings or, that type of renting it out for that purpose.
All right, does any board member have any question before we move it along to the public input?
Mr. Chairman, I just have a couple other questions. Looking at the elevations, the proposed north elevation shows just kind of a triple window in the front, and yet the plan seems to show a door in the middle of that, which would appear to me to be a good alternative main door or entrance, as opposed to the porch entry, which comes right into the dining room, living room. That kind of comes in more toward the kitchen, I guess you'd say. And I just wanted to confirm that the north elevation, that there is a door in the middle there as opposed to just window.
Can I interject there, Mr. Martin?
So go ahead.
Yeah, in talking with the architect, there is a door there, and presently that's where the entrance is on that side of the house. So that's where the parking area is. There's a garage there to the right, but we enter from that porch on the north side of the house. That's correct.
Right. Because I think that would be a good alternative, and it seems to work well with your plan. At the same time, while getting rid of the whole other door and step, which is going to be high and involve a lot of steps and be kind of, I think it might look a little strange anyway. So I think that's maybe a good alternative. I had another question, but I just forgot it, so I might come back.
Well, you'll be able to think of it. And we'll
Yeah.
come back to it. At this time, I'm going to ask if anybody in the audience is in favor of this petition, please raise your hand so the moderator may identify you and invite you in. Ms. Moderator,
I do have Brian Wall.
all right. Is he indicating he's in favor of this petition?
He is. I just promoted him to panelist if you'd like
All
to
right.
hear him speak.
Thank you. Hello, Attorney Wall. How are you?
Good, Mr. Chairman. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
It's good to see you. For the record, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, my name is Brian Wall. I'm an attorney and I have an office in Sandwich. And this evening I have the pleasure of representing the Gravelin family, which owns the property directly across the street from 8 Grove Street. And it is diagonally across the property, diagonally across from 15 Park Avenue, which is the property that is on the next item on your agenda. What I have to say to the board tonight is that when my clients received simultaneously applications to raise and replace the properties at 8 Grove and 15 Park, they became concerned that there was a potential that the two abutting properties being increased the way they were could possibly be used for commercial purposes, specifically with the waterfront location as venues to hold events such as weddings or reunions and the like. And of course, they became associated with, they became concerned with the kinds of things that are associated with those events like noise and crowds and parking. So what we did was we reached out to Mr. Tardif, and I've had a couple of conversations with him, and he has assured me that this is not his client's intent. And I said, well, that's very good, but we also know that properties do change hands, and so it could be possible in the future. So we discussed stipulating to some conditions, and Mr. Tardif did give those to the board in this presentation. Primarily, they're concerned with a condition that says the properties are going to be used for residential purposes and not for commercial venues, and not to have commercial vehicles parked there. And Mr. Tardif has said that Mr. Lenzi, the applicant, is agreeable to that. And with those assurances, my client's concerns have been addressed, and they are in support of the Lenzi's project.
Thank you so very much, Attorney Wall, and thank you for your brevity. Is there anybody else in our audience that cares to speak in favor of the petition If so, please raise your hand and let the moderator identify you. And Ms. Moderator, your mic is off. Is there anybody else?
No more hands.
All right. Is there anybody in our audience who would care to speak in opposition to this petition? If so, please raise your hand.
I will start with Chris Lutazzi.
That's fine. Please invite Chris in. And what was the last name again, please? Oh, there it is. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Chris Lutazzi. I live at 22 Park Ave. My mom lives at 18 Park Ave. We also own 21 Grove Street, my husband and I, and my mom owns 6 Park Ave, which is a really fancy way of saying we own all the property behind this home on the other side of Park Ave. First, I want to say that I love the Lindsays. I think changing this house would only help the neighborhood. I've been there my 52 years, and I don't think any work has been put into this house for at least the last 30.
No, we've lost you. Ms. Lutazzi, we've lost you.
Let me see if I can get her back.
For those at home, please understand that electronics, as good as they are still fallible. So.
I don't know where she went.
Well, perhaps she'll come back, and if so, please let us know so we can invite her in. Does anybody else in our audience care to speak in opposition to this petition? If so, please raise your hand and let us know who you are.
I have Nick Cooper and Doug Peabody.
All right. Why don't you invite them in?
Mute.
There you are.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, we can. Yeah.
Hi.
Now, before you present your opposition, if you could, ma'am.
Okay. My name is.
I know
Anita
you wrote a
Cooper.
letter.
Yes, I did.
I'm not going to, if you're going to be speaking, I'm not going to read the letter into the record as well, okay?
Right.
So you,
And I gather, may I ask you, Chairman DeYoung, I had asked if this could be put off until we've lined up our attorney, but I guess that's not going to happen, correct?
no, it's not going to happen. We have no formal request in front of us.
Right.
And other than via your letter, your attorney hasn't communicated with our board. This is a properly noticed and scheduled meeting, and we're going to proceed to its merits.
Right, I understand. So my name is Anita Cooper. I'm here with my husband, Doug Peabody. We are abutters ×2. I own 12 Highland Street, and we jointly own 16 Highland Street, which is directly across from the 8 Grove Street across the creek. So I'm looking at it now. There are several comments we have, but I guess the first thing that has struck me is the talk about the how far back, the setback from Grove Street. And it's not clear at all from the plan that was put up on the screen that on three sides of the house, there is no interior, there is no house. It's all deck of about 8 feet deep. And what the plan seems to, and what everyone's been saying or assuming, and the way it's been presented, is that the house is going to be less close to Grove Street, whereas if you're defining the house as the livable interior space, it will be far closer, because that has been presented as, you know, the actual footprint of the house, which is not correct at all. 3 sides of it have a roughly 8-foot deep deck, which has no foundation under it. It's open space. So
there is no current construction above grade on 3 sides, 3 sides of the house. And what's been proposed is to extend to the north
And to the east.
and to the east, the house by approximately 10 feet all the way to a retaining wall on the driveway. So it's adding significant space north and south to an area where there is no construction above grade presently.
Which is exactly the opposite of what you've indicated you'd be interested in seeing.
So it's creating a much more monolithic, much larger, house construction on the same space. So it's not less conforming at all. It's more and more non-conforming. And, so that leads to a number of other problems, but I'll just leave you with that at the moment.
So there's that. There's the height of it. It's a 4-bedroom house, but on the plans, it shows a 5-bedroom house. And I didn't think that becoming yet more non-conforming was something that was desirable by the town. I'm surprised that anyone is saying that you can have a 3rd floor livable space, because certainly when we did our house, that wasn't the case. And what we're talking about in terms of what is proposed is not a large house. It's immense. It's huge in terms of the increase in space and the increase in height. And as I said, I'm looking at it here right now. So it is not conforming. It is not something that will make the neighborhood look better. On the contrary, many neighbors are very concerned with it. With that, we spoke with Mike Lindsay for a couple of hours in January, and voiced our concerns, I hope nicely, to which he said that he understood some, and we had asked about maybe shielding the pool area and the driveway area with greenery of some sort, or trees or what have you, because not only for us will it be a huge change and not one that we're happy about to look at, but there's an enormous voices carry. And we know from experience that, you can hear conversations, et cetera, here because of the wind, because of where we are. And he said, yes, he would talk to us, but really nothing happened. I mean, they've added a few little very low bushes way on the edge of and he also told us that all the neighbors that he had spoken with were happy about his plans. And I can tell you, and I think you will see with those who follow me, nobody is happy with his plans. Nobody. Everyone is in shock, including his neighbor and, a relative who knew nothing about what he's doing. So this is a real problem for us. Oh, I can't hear you. Can you hear me? I can't hear you.
I apologize. Ma'am,
Sorry.
why don't we let those people that are going to speak for themselves instead of.
Absolutely.
Okay. You've said they're coming up, so let's let them come up.
Okay.
And if we can get to any other merits, we understand your concerns, certainly, and you've expressed them very well. And so certainly the board will consider everything everybody says this evening. But if you've pretty much covered, if you've got all those people in the audience that you tell me want to speak, I want to move along so I can eat dinner before 10
I'll just say
o'clock.
one last thing is that I'm not against at all, and never have been, improving one's property. This goes, I think, far beyond that. It quote improves it, unquote, to the detriment of those around. Too big, too massive, too, So anyway, yes, let the others speak now.
Thank you very much. Ms. Latazzi, am I saying that right, Latazzi?
Yes, you are. Thank you.
All right, please, if you would go back, we're sorry we lost you, but please tell us what you have to say.
Certainly. So when I had a question for the board on how, and forgive me as my notes are on my other screen, how is commercial defined? I understand that it won't have events, but does that mean it would not be a rental property, or is that not defined under commercial?
Well, if it's single family, the suggestion was a condition that it remains single family only. If a single family is occupying it, nobody in the neighborhood has anything to say about it. And what they can do, however, is complain when there's noise to the police department, I live in an area where I can hear people a football distance away from me because it crosses a marsh. But you got to get used to it here. I don't know what we can say about that.
So I'm just to clarify, sir, so you're saying commercial doesn't have anything to do with rental, to single family can be rented. I'm just asking for the definition.
Yeah, no, anybody can rent their property. There's no
Okay.
prohibition in town about that.
Understood. So that was just for clarifying for your conversation. I have difficulty having a conversation regarding 8 Grove Street without speaking about 15 Park Ave. And I know that's a different piece, but if I could speak about them, since I'm behind both of these properties, and then maybe I can just say my comments for others. I did have a concern about the stairs being closer. I understand there is an existing porch there, but it seems that that's off the table. My comments are really for the 15 Park Ave, but I think it could be said for both of these. My thought was if I didn't say anything about 8 Grove Street, then I could speak about 15 Park Ave, but the proposed 3-story house is not in keeping with the rest of the neighborhood, the homes in the neighborhood. The magnitude of the expansion is considerable. It's not compatible with the homes in the surrounding area. Many of them have been converted to year-round homes, such as my own Gambrel house, without the need for such an expansive build. Yet I do have an extensive amount of area I could build. I think there can be an argument made that these giant properties that maximize the footprint devalue the surrounding homes, McMansions, if you will. Most of the homes in the neighborhood don't have a bathroom for each bedroom, having, 4 or 5 bedrooms and bathrooms. This particularly in the 15 Park Street, where you only have, a 700 square footprint. My mother is the one that's abuts this across the street, and back on 15 Park Ave, the original proposal was just a living room. And we were proponents of that. We were for it. Then it was to add a floor and put in the living room back in 2002. We were in favor for that, even though it was going to block the view and it wasn't in keeping. Now we're talking about a 3-story home with a cupola on top. We'll make the footprint smaller by 55 feet, but then we're going to go up to, 34 feet. This just doesn't seem to be in keeping. I mean, I felt like if the 8 Grove Street home was going to be their home and that's what they were going to stay in, I appreciate it. They have a large family and they need to account for having all those folks have a room, but having both these properties go up so tremendously, it's just not in keeping with the neighborhood. So my feelings really were that if the 8 Grove Street could lose the side stairs and we could have a serious conversation about 15 Park Ave, which is the house behind it, the same owner, it's the next item on the list, about them being, it's non-conforming, but if there's a way that we could lose a floor on that, so we're just not shoving as much building as we can on whatever lot we can get away with. It just, and the Gravlins, I appreciate that they are in support of this project. They're also building a very large home next to theirs and an empty lot as well. It just seems that the neighborhood I grew up in 52 years is just blowing out capacity and maxing out their footprint as much as possible. And that's not really what the neighborhood was set up for in 1890 when the properties were all sold as second homes. I'm one of the few people that actually lives year round there as well. All these homes are unoccupied. So that's pretty much what I need to say. And I'm happy to reiterate that for the 15 Park Ave, but I was like, if we're gonna do one giant house, do we really need 2 giant houses? I would just really start to take over the neighborhood in size.
Well, thank you for being succinct and well stated. With that, let us move on. Does anybody else in our audience care to speak in opposition of this petition? Raise your hands so the moderator may identify you.
I promoted Fran Siafi, I think, to panelist.
All right. Good evening. If you unmute, you need to unmute yourself so we can hear
All
you.
right, got it. Okay.
God, this is his 4th house.
This is me.
isn't it?
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
I wanted to say that I love my home on Grove Street that I bought not too long ago, that I planned to retire to with my husband. We've put so much love into it, and it is my very favorite place. If you go down Grove Street from the beach, it is beautiful. Houses on both sides, coming all the way from the back where the bog is. Beautiful homes that have been there for many years. Most of them kind of small, cottagey type of things. And the charm of that neighborhood is just indescribable as far as I'm concerned. People who visit me there say I have a piece of heaven. And it's a short enough walk to the beach that if I go with my grandchildren, I can leave them on the beach and go back and get some juice and come back. It's just heaven to me. It's wonderful. But this, these two proposed homes will so change the character of the neighborhood. It's not the modern and high and just so expansive. I don't understand why it has to go up 3 floors. They already have, no disrespect to the Lindsays, I don't know them, I've never met them, but they have that front property, I guess that's the Grove Street property, has a gorgeous unobstructed view of the beach. Gorgeous. If they build that up 3 floors, the people that are behind them cut part of that view off. Same thing with Park Ave. I mean, yeah, with Park Ave going up 3 floors. It just seems unnecessarily and inappropriately high for that neighborhood. There is not another 3-story on the Grove Street corner area. They're all small cottagey homes, kind of in keeping with that charm. So I want to say, yeah, go ahead and have 2 floors, but does it have to be out to the edges and up to the sky, just all encompassing like that, and taking away the charm and the beauty of the rest of the homes in that neighborhood? I don't know if I would continue to live there if those houses get built, because it will substantially change. If you guys, you gentlemen, haven't been down Grove Street, please come and see what I'm talking about. Miss Lutazi has a bungalow across the street from mine. It's just beautiful. It's got little window boxes. Again, I'm just trying to say this will significantly impact the neighborhood. I don't think it adds beauty or value. I think it adds modernization and expansion that I do not wish to live near.
Well, thank you very much. I think we've covered your very succinctly and well said statements and concerns. Does anybody else in our audience care to speak in opposition to this petition? If so, please raise your hand. Ms. Moderator?
I am promoting Marilyn O.
Okay.
Hello?
Yes.
Hi, my name's Marilyn Otis Foss. I live at 22 Highland Street. I completely agree with what Anik Cooper said and Doug Peabody. I have lived across from the petitioner's 22 Highland Street home, which is a large structure as well, that is rented for a good portion of the summer. Unfortunately, sometimes the people he rents to hold all-night parties, stack 30 people, which I have photographs of, into the home. It's a nuisance. It destroys the quiet enjoyment that we have in our home. It's really troubling and upsetting to have people pulling in at all hours of the night. And my biggest fear is that he does own 2 in the neighborhood already, one down at Bayview Beach and the one across from me, that this next group of homes that he will redo will be rental homes and will bring a lot of new people, because it changes every week, into the neighborhood. using these septic systems, using the beaches, not respectful of other people. Noise complaints I've made to the Yarmouth Police Department. And I think that has to be weighted because commercial use, as you've said, is not letting people rent their home. They have no problem with renting your home, but these aren't usable properties by the owners. They are investment properties. So let's differentiate that right away. This is the same thing that Barnstable's encountering, where you've got these trusts and limited liability corporations buying up homes in neighborhoods, not living in them any amount of time during the year, and using them for rental income. I don't think it's a great thing for our residential neighborhoods. My family has been in this neighborhood. I am the third generation to own the home. I completely agree that these homes have to be renovated. We did ours in the 80s, didn't change the outside, but gutted it inside and found newspaper as insulation, etc. So I have no problem with making and beautifying them, but keeping, as some of the commentators have already said, the character, the integrity of the neighborhood. This is a neighborhood. It is not a hotel. I have people from the Lindsay's home coming to my front door asking for corkscrews, etc. during the summer. It's not a great experience. You go down to the end of Highland Street to the beach, you can't even find a seat because there are so many people down there from the various rentals. This is not the neighborhood I grew up in, coming here summers to visit my great uncle Paul. It is just destroying the neighborhood. So I hope that the committee will take that into consideration. Yarmouth's a wonderful town. I live here year round. I love this home more than life itself. It to me represents my family, great memories of Cape Cod, and it's just being altered with these McMansions to, I think, a very sad state. And
Thank you very much.
I appreciate the opportunity to comment.
Thank you very much. You did a wonderful job of your comments. Is there anybody else in the audience that wishes to speak in opposition to this petition? Raise your hand.
I'm promoting Dan Rosenthal.
Please go ahead, Ms. Rosenthal. Oh, Dan, I'm sorry. I thought she said Jan. I apologize, Dan. Please go ahead, Dan.
Push the unmute button. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm not coming through. Okay. I don't know what's...
We need to have you speak. If you're unable to hear us, now your mic is muted.
It should be unmuted now.
Yeah, well, now we hear you. So go ahead and tell us what you want to tell us.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I represent 21 Grove Street. And that's the cute bungalow with the window boxes across from Fran's. And when I look down the street, one of the things I really appreciate is being able to see the water and looking at all the other houses that are in keeping with mine. And I am opposed to building a McMansion at the end of the street that's just so massive and so full of bedrooms and bathrooms. And it's so much bigger than it needs to be for that particular property.
You need your email?
So if it's possible to make it more conforming instead of less conforming, that's what I would advocate.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Moderator, is there anybody else with their hand up wishing to speak in opposition?
Oh. Yes, I'm going to promote Kulin Shah.
No, that's okay. Yeah. Mr. Kulin Shah, yeah. He sent the letter in. I'm not gonna, if you're gonna speak, I'm not gonna read your letter, so that's fine. Would you go ahead, sir, and tell us what you have to say? Mr. Shah? Now's your time. Unmute your mic, please. Mr. Shaw.
Still muted.
All right, so we need to move on. Is there anybody else in our audience that has
Okay,
their?
can you hear me now?
Yes, please, go ahead. We're
Okay.
all waiting.
So my name is Kulin Shah. I live on 2 Highland Street, right across the street from 15 Grove Street, from 8 Grove Street. Across the creek. Across the creek. And Michael and Sandra, they own total of 4 properties in this neighborhood. Each one of this property has been bought by them only for the purposes of renting. They don't live here year round. They hardly use the property. And I have a little concern. Buy another property and so become totally like just as well have a hotel zone here. This is a residential zone. And I'm a little sick and tired of this because I bought this property 25 years ago, so that I'm in a residential neighborhood. And he's being able to buy the property left, right, and center and use this for just for the rental. Come on, give me a break. At least spend it some time. It is not like the olden time where you had to use certain amount of time to be owning it. Now you can rent all year round. So just as well have declared this zone as a hotel zone. And I'm pretty sure that the place across the street, though he says that he will not be renting it, let me assure you, the guy owns a property, he owns a catering services. He's got a truck. Next thing will be, we'll have the trucks coming here. He rented the property to the people because he can rent it. And next thing the truck will be the caterer. What are we having here? Restaurants, hotels, or the motels? So I am totally against this proposal of both properties.
Well, thank you very much. All right, now we're gonna ask, is there anybody else in our audience that cares to speak in opposition? If so, raise your hand, let the moderator know.
So I kill the deal tonight.
No more hands. No more
All
hands.
right, so we now, I do want to, however, read in one letter of opposition. I didn't read in earlier as I wasn't sure if the person was going to speak. This is a letter, email rather, from Marilyn Boss. Marilyn lives at 25 Highland Street.
You did speak.
Pardon me?
You did speak.
Oh, she did? Marilyn Boss?
Yes.
Oh, I wrote the name down wrong then. I have another, it's another Marilyn. Marilyn O.
Otis Boss.
Oh, one of the same people. Okay. I apologize. So we don't need to read it in. My poor hearing. Called old age, everyone. So now let us move, close the public commentary on the petition, open it up to board discussion, deliberation. And we'll start with the same order. Mr. Martin, please.
I don't know, it's a tough one. We have a lot of neighbors that aren't at all in favor of it. And I have my reservations as well. It's certainly a nice looking house, but it's awfully large and awfully tall. In looking at the plans, it would seem to me that it could also be set back a little farther. I mean, we're constructing the pool, for instance, right up to the work limit line, and yet the house is set back quite a ways from the work limit line. So, I mean, I think it just could be set back a little bit more and be more conforming. I'm also a little reluctant, relevant to the third story and how high that's getting and how overbearing it is. I mean, I think it's just becomes to a point where it's somewhat detrimental. I mean, yes, it's a big lot overall, but a lot of it's wetland. And I'm concerned about the house being that close to the road. If they want a new house there, something a little more reasonable and in keeping with the neighborhood and in keeping with keeping the neighbors happier, along with a little further setback from the road. I mean, this footprint doesn't need to be as big as it is right now. I mean, we've all seen houses are kind of narrow and kind of this and kind of that to fit in better and to conform with their setbacks. So I don't see any reason why we couldn't come up with something that's not quite as obtrusive as what I'm seeing here.
Okay, Mr. Barron, please.
I noted from Mr. Lindsay's comments, he claims that he's the owner. Whereas the paperwork we've received list him as, he and his wife as trustee.
Well, that's what they are.
There may be a small differential, but it does beg the question of the rental for the rental issues that the neighbors have raised. Not for profit. In my own personal property, I've rented it out during summers when I was living up in Worcester. And the cash flow was certainly went into my pocket as profit. And so I understand the idea of being able to have some value returned to the ownership. But I agree with Mr. Martin that there could be a different orientation of the building. The bylaw is raise and replace, and so if you're going to raise and replace in the same footprint, to change the footprint or change the location of the footprint, it brings up entirely different questions. At this point, I'm inclined not to be in favor of the proposal.
Mr. Igo?
Yes, I just want to clarify one thing, and I heard it come up, and unfortunately, where I am right now is I don't have my internet on, so I can't look at the plan itself. But I am looking on another phone of mine. I'm using two iPhones here, so bear with me. But the current footprint, this is a question for Kieran. What is the square footage of the current footprint?
Mr. Igo, would you mind if I shared my screen again so I could bring that?
Yeah,
up?
go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah.
So here's the current building. So the existing building coverage is 2402, which is 11.9% of the upland.
No, I don't want to know that. I want to know what the current square footage of the current foundation is on the house, excluding these sun decks. Are you including these covered decks in the footprint?
We are required to, yes, by the building department.
You're required to.
Yeah,
Yes.
So what you're representing here, and I'm not quite sure that I would agree with this, but you're saying that your footprint includes those verandas that go around.
Yes.
Okay, so if you take those verandas off and you come back to the main house, how far off the street is that? Excluding those verandas. Roughly.
Roughly 10 feet.
You're 10 feet off the road
Yes.
when you go back to the main house? Okay. All right. All right. Well, I'm not sure that I would agree that on a raise and replace that you can encompass these verandas for purposes of establishing a footprint. Now, maybe the building department might disagree with that, but I would use the existing foundation. That would be my interpretation of a footprint. So if you're including those, which I may have misread the plan wrong and not understood it. I'm looking at the existing house on the field card right now. I don't think I would agree with that. So I would consider this expanding the footprint myself. In terms of, I am a bit concerned with the size and the height of it as well, the more that I look at it here. And unfortunately, again, I'm limited to my plans that I'm seeing. I hear the concerns of the neighbors. I do want to just make one thing clear. There is no right to use this property commercially that I'm aware of. And if someone else is on the board and like to correct me on that, because I'm hearing counsels for neighbors talking about having a condition about no commercial use. I don't know in the bylaw, and perhaps someone here can tell me where there's any allowed commercial use in an R25 zoning district. Are we all in agreement with that?
I'm in agreement. There's no commercial use on this property. Yep.
So if we put a condition in there, I mean, we can put a condition in there, but it's not required.
However, we've seen
Are we
this
in agreement
happen.
with that?
We've seen this happen in other parts of the town. I think Mr. Todd.
Oh, I see it happen over there at Englewood Beach. We have someone who just rents things out. Yeah.
Yeah, uses it for.
And
a
they
wedding
should be fined up to
Okay.
$300 a day. And that's an enforcement issue that should fall under the building department. Okay, that's a zoning violation. I mean, I'm certainly happy to put those conditions in, but just so we're all clear, it's already a prohibition for them to rent this up. Well, not to rent it out, but if they're renting it out commercially to have weddings or parties or what have you, that's not an allowed use. Having said that, I am not comfortable with the size of this footprint relative to the house that was there. And I do think it's very expansive. I would consider this, as it sits right now, to be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing house that's there now. So I'm certainly willing to work with the homeowner to improve his property, but I think this one right here is just a little bit more than I could accept. So in its present condition, I don't think I could support this petition tonight, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm just going to weigh in and say a couple of things, please. First of all, when we talk about we don't like the height is allowed. So it's a non-issue as far as I'm concerned. Other than as it relates to the character, whether or not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood's character or the character of the town. We keep in mind that we're dealing with section 104.3.2. I appreciate very much when a petitioner comes before us and reduces the nonconformity. I think that's what this petitioner has done, whether or not they can bring it back, like Mr. Martin says, or Mr. Barron says, to the work limit line. It looks to me like they could. It looks to me like there's a lot of linear feet back there. So I'm not quite sure I understand why it needs to be this close for convenience or something. I don't know, but it looks to me to be, I don't have a ruler, but probably about a good 10 feet. And while I understand they might like to have some kind of backyard, if I were a neighbor, I wouldn't want it to be in my front yard either. But I think that when we talk about what's going on here, the issues of whether or not there is loud noise there, well, that's not this board's purview. And we don't get into that enforcement, that they rent the properties instead of living in them. That's not this board's concern. Our concern are those requirements and specifications that are set forth in our zoning bylaw. And so, these other things may in fact be troublesome, but I'm not sure that a person that owns property isn't entitled to use it to its best use. Its best use. And if they comply with the law, they can do anything they want with this house. The idea of including two conditions would hopefully help to alleviate some concerns by the neighbors. I think the thing that I'm stuck on And I appreciate very much that people don't want to see McMansions, that, for whatever that is a good definition of. Anybody's definition might be different. I sit in a house that's 34 and a half feet from my driveway. Height is 34 and a half as measured from my driveway. And gee, my neighbors, I looks tall to me, but not concerning to my neighbors. So I'm not really sure that if you comply with the height, that should be an issue that causes us to deny this. And so when I look at the suggestion that it, again, going to 104.3.2, and we find that these words are contained in it, concerning the raise and replacement of a property, it's by special permit from a non-conforming property, special permit by the Board of Appeals. If it is determined that such alteration, extension, or raise and replacement will not be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than is the existing non-conforming structure. What I've heard as detrimental to the neighbors is something that we hear in many of these shorefront properties. Well, they're going to be blocking my view. Well, unless you have an easement for a view, that's not a concern of ours. And you can challenge it in any court. If you don't have an easement for a view, that doesn't count. So, it's taller than my home. It's changing the character. Well, the character of our town is changing. And it's changing from 1921 homes to more modern homes with modern conveniences. So if taken to a vote tonight, I'm going to vote in favor of this. We have a 4-member board. I don't know, is your petitioner interested in stepping it back so that they can make changes that allow for Mr. Igo's concern, Mr. Martin's, Mr. Barron's concern? Because frankly, I like the project and I'm not asking for anything other than to get it back from the street as far as you can. And if that's only the removal of those covered stairs, I'm satisfied with that. So you have one yay vote.
Well, obviously, it doesn't appear we'd have the votes tonight for what is on the plan. So, and because the Lindsays are willing to work on that plan, that's fine. We could request a continuance to see what we could do with the plan. And then, I'd say at a minimum of a month, I would like to, we have to talk to the Conservation Commission again, and also talk to the architect and see what we can do. And that's not a problem. We can do that. I tend to agree with you. I just want to make sure that when we come back, that we're talking apples and apples here, because
I can't promise that. You're going to show us what you're going to do.
Well, no, I guess what I'm saying is,
you've heard the concerns of 3 of the board members sitting here tonight. And we will probably have a 4th board member other than myself that evening that will, figure out what this is all about by watching the tapes and certifying that they have reviewed the processes today. So that the 3 members that are on this board, you've heard their concerns, and I don't think it's appropriate for us to give you any assurance.
Well,
do the best you can to meet our concerns.
I guess what I was saying is that we calculate a footprint based on what the building department tells us. I know that Mr. Igo has his idea. And I guess what I'm saying is, if I'm not going to count the porches on the existing, I'm not going to count the porches on what we're proposing. I just want to know what the rules are, because we've been including decks as part of footprint since I moved to town. And so if we're not doing that anymore, I just need to know.
I think our building commissioner should tell us the square footage of the existing structure.
The footprint, you mean?
Yeah,
so
he signed off on these plans. I mean, he signed off on the application. So,
okay. Well,
sorry, Mr. Chairman, for the record, if I could, while we were online there, I just checked the dimension from the existing face of the enclosed building to the street, and it is 8 feet 2 inches. Just for the record, to put that clear. And if I could just share my screen again, just for 1 second. Would that be possible?
Sure, yeah. Except we want to move this along. We have another one from
Got an Apple sign in Miami, Florida.
Can you get it, get the split screen up, please? There we go.
Can you see this, Mr.?
Well, we
No,
don't
it's
have
not-
it.
It's
We
not
don't
coming
have it.
through,
Could you
Kieran.
just- Could you tell us what you're trying to show us?
I'm trying to show you some adjacent buildings that we took pictures of. Have they showed up?
Yes.
Okay. We start off, Mr. Bound had mentioned some houses on Glenwood Street. You can see here that this is a full 3 stories, well, 2.5 stories above the existing grade. This is another one on Glenwood Street, where you can see the first floor, second floor, and the half story, another half story over the garage on this one. This one is on Park Avenue and is very similar to what we're proposing. You see a floor down below, first floor here, a second floor there, and another floor up in the very top. So this is exactly, except, you know, for the, based on the flood zone requirements, it's designed similar. And these are houses that some of the people, the neighbors talked about tonight. This is 12 Highland right here. And this property is 16 Highland. And this again is extremely similar to what we're proposing. The drive under garage, the first floor, the second floor, and this is the attic area, the 2.5 story, if you will. So the only reason I bring these up is to say that the neighbors, I fully understand the concern, but these are not the only 2.5 story houses on drive under garages in this neighborhood. Yes, there are a lot of cottages, but there are also a lot of these types of houses. All these houses are within 1,000 feet of our client's property. So for the record, I just wanted to show that these are not the only houses. You can see here, this number 12 and 16 are substantial buildings in their own right. And these are across, literally, they're the adjacent property across the little stream. So I just wanted to get that on the record if I could. For the members, I understand.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. If we can go back to the full screen, please. The vote is not going to be favorable to the petitioner. I'm not trying to kick that down the road a bad can, but if there's accommodations to the concerns of Mr. Martin, Mr. Barron, Mr. Igo, that you could make, again, I only ask if it can go back from the street, that'd be nice. If it has to do no more than remove the covered porch, I'm satisfied with the project in all ways. So if you know, you've heard their concerns, if you could address maybe those concerns by perhaps a redesign in some fashion, that would be probably a good thing for us then to consider. And since most people have the benefit of Zoom, everybody that's chimed in tonight can look at the plans and familiarize themselves with what's going to be built, if it's going to be allowed before the next meeting. So with that, what do you want?
I would like to continue the matter. Actually, we might need more than a month, but I'll be willing to sign any extension that the board thinks is reasonable, and keep this thing moving.
Well, understanding you've got to have architectural drawings changed, you've got to have site plans changed. Is 60 days probably enough?
It'll be. That's a good start. I think actually, I think that might do it, because the plans have to be adjusted but not redone from scratch. So I think we can probably work that. The only concern would be the Conservation Commission, but we'll get in touch with them.
Karen, is that a reasonable timetable for you to do your work?
Yes.
Okay, so then you will agree to extend, assuming the board votes to continue the matter, will you agree to sign that extension agreement, sir, in the normal course and return it to our board?
I will.
Okay, thank you. Are you asking somebody to make a motion to continue this then for 60 days?
Yes,
Is somebody so inclined to make that motion?
So moved.
Second.
Just give me a second, everyone, please. So on the motion made by Mr. Martin, seconded by Mr. Barron, we will take a roll call vote. Mr. Martin,
Aye.
Mr. Barron,
Aye.
Mr. Igo,
Aye.
and Mr. DeYoung is an aye. It therefore carries.
Thank you.
We look forward to seeing you in 60 days, or as close to that time as we can get. That meeting within that 60-day range, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's go to our next matter. Petition number 4891. And our petitioner is the same, and for whoever had concerns, I think it was Mr. Barron. In each instance, the petitions state that they are the trustees of the Park or Grove Avenue Trust, so Grove Street Trust. And that's the capacity in which they're presenting these petitions. So on petition 4891, give me a second, please. This petition is by Michael J. Lindsay Sr. and Sandra M. Lindsay, trustees of Park Avenue Realty Trust. Property is located at 15 Park Avenue, West Yarmouth. And that property is in a zoning district R25. This applicant is now seeking tonight a variance from zoning bylaw 104.3.2 to raise and replace a single-family dwelling on a non-compliant lot. Do you wish to present this petition this evening?
We do.
Okay, go right ahead.
Thank you. For the record, Paul Tardif for the applicant. As you indicated, the property is in the R25 zoning district and is adjacent to the last property we just discussed at A Grove, but this is on the corner of Park Ave. This property currently is improved with a simple Cape Cod one-story single-family home with 2 bedrooms and 1 bath, constructed in approximately 1948. Lot contains 5,850 square feet of area with a total street frontage of 153 feet. The lot coverage is currently at 13.7%. There is a Title V septic system on the property capable of handling up to 3 bedrooms. I believe, for the record, we do need to go through some of the history. Mr. DeYoung, I'll try to be as concise as I can.
Oh, no, good. You take the time you need. Go ahead.
The property is actually comprised of 2 lots. One is recorded with the Barnstable County Registry of Deeds and the other with the Land Court Division of the Barnstable Registry. The recorded portion of the property first appears on the famous Hyannis Park plan from 1892. And the Land Court parcel was created in 1949 along the southerly border of the property, measuring 90 feet by 25 feet. So together, those 2 properties create this lot. Now, here's where the history gets a little difficult. In 1948, a woman by the name of May Nickel purchased the recorded property. So that's the lot on the corner. And then she acquired the year before the Land Court property in 1947. Now, at that point, the lot in question contained 6,750 square feet of area. In February of 1950, so about 2 years later, there was an amendment to the zoning bylaw, which was adopted, and that created a minimum lot area of 8,500 square feet in the zoning district. At that point, this lot was grandfathered and was pre-existing non-conforming. Now, it appears that Ms. Nickel constructed the house on this lot in 1948. By deed in 1957, she then conveyed the property to Raymond and Doris Gorman. Now, that was April of 57. In July of 1957, it appears that she, who owned the property right next door on Park Ave, so that's number 11, went and asked the Raymonds to convey back to her a strip of land measuring 12 feet along the entire length of that common boundary. So 75 feet, 12 feet by 75 feet, to convey back a strip. Now, I say that she went back and asked them because we see we see this a lot. I get a lot of inquiries about, can I convey a strip over to my neighbor? He needs this, she needs that. But there's a couple of things that are on record that give me a little information. I believe that she went over and asked for a strip of land because, first of all, the Raymonds had given a mortgage to the Cape Cod Cooperative Bank when they purchased the lot. And they actually went out and got a partial release for that 12 by 75 foot strip. In addition, in April of 1957, the land court plan was created to create a new lot for that 12-foot strip of the land court parcel. So they knew that by doing this, they would have to amend the land court plan, which is no small feat. I believe that this was done for the fact that Miss Nickel, who again will own the property next door, had constructed her house on the lot in 1948, and it was located only 6 inches from the side setback. And I can tell that because there have been subsequent plot plans filed where her house is located 12.5 feet away from the Lindsay's property. So she either wanted to have a conforming side setback or she had plans to add to her house. Either way, this transfer was done. And at that point, the lot dropped from 6750 down to the current 5850. And because of that, made it more non-conforming and thus lost the grandfathering. The result of that deed is what we have today. And little did the Raymonds know what they had done and probably never learned the consequences of this unfortunate conveyance. The petitioner's parents, Albert and Joan Lindsay, purchased the property at 15 Park from the Raymonds estate in November of 1999. In 2002, Albert and Joan applied for a building permit to allow for a second-story addition and a small addition to the east side of the house. And it was at this point that the Lindsays and the town of Yarmouth became aware of that the lot had lost its grandfathering rights. The decisions are part of the application. I'm not going to revisit it, but basically the determination was that because the lot was now non-compliant, that anything done at that property would require a variance. I will tell you that, one, under our current zoning bylaw, if the property had retained its grandfathering rights, that the proposal before you would be allowed by right, as it meets all of the setbacks and height requirements of the bylaw, and the building commissioner could issue a building permit under 104.3.21. 2, if the petitioner wanted to raise and replace this house with the exact same structure that sits there today, they would still need a variance to do so. And I confirmed that with the building commissioner today. So regardless of what home they're looking to build, they're going to need a variance from this board in order to do so. Now, the house that is currently there is a classic Cape Cod style, the 36 by 24 center door. It conforms to the setbacks and the height restrictions. The house that is on the site is deteriorating and making it livable is proving difficult. More and more problems are arising. The foundation is a block foundation, and that's beginning to crumble. So the proposal tonight is to remove the existing house and to construct a new home on the exact same location, on the same size foundation, on a slab, so it doesn't move. The house would contain 2.5 stories and was designed to pair with the house over at 8 Grove Street. The new house would continue to meet all the setback requirements of the bylaw and would be less than 35 feet in height. The footprint actually would decrease by 55 square feet, reducing the lot coverage to 12.7%, which is a pretty good task considering that you have 5,850 feet to work with. Now, pursuant to the zoning bylaw under 102.2.2, the Board of Appeals may issue a variance if it finds that the literal enforcement of the provisions of this bylaw would involve a substantial hardship, financial or otherwise, to the petitioner or the appellant. The hardship is owing to circumstances relating to the soil conditions, shape, or topography of the land or structures, and especially affecting the land and structures, but not affecting generally the zoning district in which it's located. And finally, the desirable relief may be granted without substantial detriment to the public good or by nullifying or substantially derogating from the intent and purpose of the bylaw. It's our position that we need a variance to do anything on this lot. We came, the petitioner's parents appeared in front of this board. It's close to 19 years now. And I know because I was there. And I know Mr. Igo was there as well. I believe that we can meet the zoning variance criteria in this case. I think the Lenzis are certainly suffering a hardship, financial or otherwise, as a result of this non-compliant lot. They purchased the property, and by this I mean the prior owners purchased the property over which they had no control. The current petitioners now own the lot with a house that cannot be raised and replaced without a variance. So in other words, the punishment for the actions of a predecessor entitled, which took place 64 years ago, and likely for very good intentions, is that they must wait for their house to fall in on itself before they can rebuild what they have now. The unique circumstances of the property make it economically unfeasible or likely that the property would be developed in the future for the use permitted by the zoning ordinance or bylaw. It's important to remember, we're not asking to put a commercial use on the property. It continues to be a residential use, and that's what we want. We need the variance no matter what, and that is the hardship that is unique to this property. Ironically, the house that sits there now, if rebuilt as is, would not be in fitting with the style of houses in the neighborhood any longer. The neighborhood has passed it by. In essence, the structure itself has created the hardship, and the hardship continues to get harder every year. They are prohibited from doing anything with it. In addition, the existence of numerous marshes, coastal banks, and dunes does in fact make the property unique from other properties in Hyannis Park. And finally, I don't think that you would argue that there would be no substantial detriment to the public good if a variance is granted in this case. The resulting structure would not derogate from the intent and purpose of the bylaw. We are proposing to continue the residential use, proposing to use the same size foundation and location for the house so as not to interfere with neighboring properties and views, even though, as Mr. DeYoung indicated, views are not a right unless they're given by easement. We're complying with the conservation requirements, and the Conservation Commission has already approved this plan. We're meeting with the current setback and the height restrictions and are only utilizing half of the allowed lot coverage in this case. This is the case which requires the board to also review the equities and to remember that you are the board of relief. I have not come across another case like it. That's not to say that there aren't other properties like this, but you must agree that the situation with the petitioner finds himself was not self-created, was not easily learned or understood, and it was likely the result of the then owner helping the neighbor at 11 Park Avenue, whose house is now 12.5 feet from the side setback, where the Lenzis property or structure complies with the setback. The variance criteria that we always look at treats the property as if it was a bare lot. However, the quirk in this case is that it's already improved, and that's what makes the property favorable for a variance. I think that the equities allow the issuance of variance. And Mr. Chairman, would also like to reiterate the same conditions with regard to the use of the property. Understanding that there's no right for a commercial use on the property, we'd still like to let the board know that it's going to be used for single-family residential purposes, not for commercial events. And again, we're not going to park or store commercial vehicles on the property except during construction or as an invited guest. So for those reasons, I believe that the board has the ability to issue a variance in this case. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Barron, any questions about petitioner?
No, many of the comments we had on the previous property really apply to this as well. But I notice on the screen, for the Lindsay's, it says Tavern at Lindsay's. What is the, what and where is the tavern?
Yes, Mr. Barron, this is Mike Lindsay. And the Tavern at Lindsay's is in Dracut, Massachusetts, right next to Lowell, Massachusetts. The only place named Dracut in the whole world. And I know this commercial use keeps coming up, and I don't know why and I don't know where, and I didn't anticipate it, but you know, we're the 10th largest caterer in Massachusetts, according to the Boston Business Journal. And when my wife and I, Sandy, who's sitting right next to me, when we cross the Sagamore Bridge, I have a sense of relief that I'm away from my work and that I'm going to enjoy Cape Cod for a few days. So, you know, I know it keeps coming up, but I assure you, we have no intention of working on Cape Cod.
Well, I can sympathize with the thought. When I worked in Boston and I crossed the canal, it was a case of mind wipe and
You know.
okay, so I know. I have no further questions at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Igo?
Yes, so just so we're clear, this house proposed is going on the exact same foundation as is there right now?
Well, let me just tell you, it's on the same size foundation. We're not going to put it on the crumbling blocks.
Well, I
It's going to be on a
understand.
slab, but yes, same location, yes.
The same location,
If I
okay.
could,
Yes.
Mr. Igo, it's a hair smaller than the existing foundation.
Okay, and what is it to the top of the ridge from the street level?
It is 33.8.
I'm sorry, Kieran, could you repeat that one more time?
33.8.
33.8, okay, all right. Okay, and the reason, and just so I'm clear, and this is probably a question for Paul, the reason why this lot is non-compliant instead of non-conforming is because at some point in the past with a previous owner, they deeded away a portion of the property that caused this property to become non-compliant?
That's exactly right.
Okay, okay. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Martin?
No, I think I understand the whole problem with the deed and the title. And it's on the same footprint and maintaining reasonable distances from both street layouts. Again, it's kind of tall for a fairly small footprint, but it meets the bylaw as far as that goes. So I don't have any issue with the granting of the variance in this case based on the ownership issues back and forth and the plan, I should say. So I don't have any questions.
Well, you know, I've read the file in its totality, and I understand clearly how this occurred in the time when people don't think before acting. They conveyed as a neighborly gesture, I guess, to their abutter, or maybe for money, I don't know, a 12 by 75 foot strip. And that's unfortunate. It's truly unfortunate, because what that leaves us with is either this house is going to be raised and replaced, or it's going to turn into a shack because it's crumbling and failing. And I'd rather see it be a usable lot with some benefit to our community rather than what would be a derelict in potentially. So at this point, not hearing any opposition or people in support, my thoughts are that I would be able to support this as a variance. With that, Ms. Moderator, does anyone in our audience care to speak in favor of this petition? If so, please raise your hand.
I don't-
Mr. Wall is still with us, but if we could get him going here.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My client, for the record, I represent the Gravelin family at 7 Grove Street, diagonally across from the current project. My client's comments on this project are essentially the same as the last. I won't repeat them. I'll just summarize by saying the following. When my clients received the 2 applications for these projects simultaneously, they became concerned of the potential, and we take Mr. Lenzi at his word that he's not going to do that. But the project itself raised the potential that the properties could be used jointly as a venue for events. And so the conditions that have been stipulated to between my client and the Lenzis address my client's concerns, and they support this project as well. I'd simply like to add, I did hear Mr. Igo's comments and Mr. DeYoung saying that this is a residential neighborhood and commercial use is not allowed. We fully agree with that. And we also further agree with what Mr. Igo said, that if there were such a use to occur, it's a matter of enforcement. But we just feel better that if the use did occur, which again, Mr. Lenzi says will not, my clients would be in a better position to be able to simply point to a condition in a permit and say that that condition is being violated, rather than have to go through a more involved enforcement process. And the board might be familiar, a former member of this board, David Reed, had a case up in Truro where something that happened that is like my client's concerns. There was a property up there that was in a residential neighborhood. It started to be used commercially for weddings and such events, and it turned into a massive enforcement process and a land court case. And my clients are simply trying to be proactive by asking this board to allow a condition to be in the permit, which the applicant has agreed to, that will provide protection against that use in the event the property changes hands and somebody decides to use this very beautiful waterfront property in Hyannis as a place for a venue. So with those conditions in the permit, my clients support this project.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions of Attorney Wall? Hearing none. Does anybody else in our audience care to speak in favor of this petition?
I don't see any other hands raised.
Does anybody in our audience care to speak in opposition to this petition?
I will promote Chris Latazzi.
Okay, as we can, the people that indicated their displeasure with the other lot we considered this evening, I'd ask you if you have the same sort of complaints about this, if you would be succinct and to the point in identifying them, okay? And thank you.
Me too.
Go right ahead, please.
Great, thank you. The proposed 3-story building, just so we understand, was brought before this board in March 28th of 2002 for an additional living room, changed on October 10th, 2002 to be an additional family room, living room, and a second floor. We are the abutters. I'm happy to share the screen. I appreciate Mr. Healy looking for all the bigger buildings in the neighborhood within 1,000 feet, but I'm talking across the street, and it's a B street. So it's 40 feet and then a couple of feet from my home. We are not on the same wavelength of size of building. Under that section of 40A, DL 40A, section 10, section C, it says, is it going to be detrimental, which by definition is negative, disadvantage, unfavorable. I mean, the owner's attorney has stated the house is not usable. However, the house was up for sale. Then the owner decided to rent it. It is actually the home of 2 renters right now. So it is usable. The owners are not looking to rebuild. So the suggestion was, well, if it fell down, they would just have to build this anyways. No, they would still have to get a variance. I appreciate that the square footage has shrunk by 55 square feet. But I mean, we all know that title searches are strongly recommended when you purchase a home, and it's buyer beware. Everybody in the neighborhood knew that this was an issue. We all supported Michael's father and mother when they wanted to go up and increase it a little bit. But by definition, this is detrimental. And I'm happy to share my screen and show you what the actual houses look like on all sides of this street. I have it up here. But the homes that were shown to you are not the homes that are in this neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions of Ms. Latazzi? No, hearing none. Does anybody else in our audience have any thing they'd like to say in opposition to this petition? If so, raise your hand.
Fran Fiafi,
Please invite them in.
she is invited.
I'm sorry. Oh, she, there you are, Fran.
Thank you.
Now I got you, Fran. Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you. No.
Go right ahead.
I-
Are your comments the same as the last property or
Not
something
exactly.
different?
Not exactly. I don't want Mr. Lindsay to think that we were not in favor of him improving his house. I actually looked at that house to buy myself before I bought my own. And I was told at that time, I would never be able to enlarge it. I have 6 kids and clearly it was too small for me. And so if you buy it knowing that it can't be enlarged, they will not give a variance. That seems to me to be on the person. However, if it's falling down, no one's saying he doesn't have the right to rebuild it or that you guys can't grant that. But the size is what I'm asking. The going up so high makes that whole area now look like a family compound, like the Kennedy compound. You've got this giant house here and this giant house here, high. And the houses that Mr. Healy showed, although what he's saying is there are similar homes a little bit further out of the neighborhood, but that doesn't mean we would choose to live there. Those are not, those have been built. That doesn't mean you want more homes like that built. If you have condos in your neighborhood and you don't like them, you don't want another person coming in and putting 1,000 more condos in there. So while they might be nice to look at outside of the neighborhood, they don't belong there. And the height of this, again, is very distressing. And I do think you had mentioned, views and noise. That's not this board's concern. But if the board's concern is to grant the variance as long as it doesn't impact the public good, I think what you've heard from some of us is that it is our good. It's our peace. It's our enjoyment of our right to have a peaceful neighborhood and a joyful home. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you very much. And thank you for being so succinct. Does anybody else in our audience care to speak in opposition to this petition? Please raise your hand. Anybody?
I don't see any other hands raised.
All right, well,
Oh,
this
Anna
has been,
Cooper, sorry, Mr. Chairman, Anna Cooper just raised her hand.
okay, go ahead. Sure. Please go ahead. Ms. Cooper, you've been invited in. Please unmute yourself and go ahead.
Very sorry, I'm not tech savvy. I agree with the 2 ladies who just spoke that I am, and as is my husband, all for improving one's property. But the height issue, though the regulation or whatever it is says that you can go up to 35 feet, when you put it in context of the size of the lot, how close it is to other properties, is too high, and it is a huge detriment to the neighborhood, in my opinion. 2 stories, I have no problem with, but that plan is very clearly a 3-story house, and also increasing the bedrooms from 1 to 3. And I thought the 2002 decision was binding, but if it's not binding, I think it still needs to be done in a reasonable way. And what is proposed is not reasonable, in my opinion.
Well, you raise an interesting point, so you understand that was a decision addressing other issues, not those before us this evening. It is not dispositive of our consideration of this petition, but it's part of our record and we've all read it. So
okay,
we're aware of it.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
One other
moderator.
question, please. One other question, please. This is Doug Peabody.
Yes,
I'm here at 16 Highland Street in West Yarmouth. Is it necessary to give a variance to someone that owns the abutting property and can convey the amount of land that they need to establish the right to do it by right?
well, they're two separate lots. They don't have to merge those lots. There's no requirement they merge the lots.
Is there a
Because they're-
requirement that you give a variance, or can you decide what kind of variance you will give?
No, there's a variance and a variance only.
So
Not
I
sure
don't, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, but I don't understand what that means.
Well, I don't understand what you mean, a different kind of variance. We have a variance that's prescribed by our town bylaws and by chapter 48.
But you.
The criteria of which are
you
well
can
set
give
forth.
Dispensation, can you not? But it doesn't necessarily have to be the dispensation that's been asked for.
This board has no authority to require these petitioners to convey land from one lot to another.
Yes, and there's a second question, though. The second question is, if you're giving a variance, do you have to give the variance that has been asked for, or can you give a lesser variance?
Or a variance for something less.
In other
Less-
words, can you give a variance for something that's less non-conforming? on a
Yes, we understand. Yes,
pre-existing
that answer is
grandfathered
yes.
lot? Okay,
That answer is yes, absolutely. We can, by way of variance, require changes to what they're submitting if they're reasonable and appropriate. So there are there they are.
so why can't you do that? Why can't you work with the neighbors to do something that's less non-conforming and less objectionable to the neighbors?
That we would all be able to
Be happy
support.
approving, yeah.
Well, Mr. Peabody, we're not being asked to determine this petition by the neighbors, vote yea or nay. We have 4 members on this board that will consider, duly appointed board that will consider the merits of this petition in and of itself. All of the words that have been spoken in support or opposition will be part of our deliberation. So I don't know what else I can say. So if there's nothing else in terms of a criticism of the project we haven't already heard, and there is nobody else with a hand raised, is that true, Ms. Moderator?
Dan Rosenthal has his hand raised.
Please invite him in.
He is invited.
Okay. Hi.
Go ahead and tell us what you
I have
want, sir.
2 concerns. One is that this property will dwarf all the other properties right around it. It's right on the corner. And so it's pretty much, you'll have to look around this property to go anywhere. But the second big concern is you've got 3 bedrooms. When this house does get rented out to people, you're probably going to have 5 or 6 cars. And looking at the lot, I don't see where these cars are going to go other than onto the street, which is going to really be a detriment to the neighborhood, because instead of just being able to walk down the street, you now have to navigate around all these additional cars as well. It's very active. That's the way people get to the beach, is they just walk right down that street. And if you've got an additional 4 cars on the street there, that's going to be a blight. That's all I have to say.
Well, thank you very much. Those are points that are new and unique to our discussion. So we appreciate you bringing them up. Does that conclude those people that have their hand raised in opposition to this petition, Madam Moderator?
There is one more, Martha Leahy.
Please
invite
invite
her
him
in.
in. Go right ahead. Ms. Leahy, go right ahead. You need to unmute your microphone.
Yeah, okay.
There you go.
Hi there. My name is Sean Leahy. My mother would like to read a statement. She lives at 11 Park Avenue, which is next to the property in question.
Well, I had somebody ask me that one night, and it was a 42-page statement. So What are we talking about?
I
here?
can assure you it's only one page.
All right, then go right ahead, please.
Okay.
As a direct abutter to the subject property, I'm writing to express my strong opposition to the current proposal. I have resided in the area since 1968, when my late husband and I purchased a cottage on Grove Street in Hyannis Park. We moved to 11 Park Avenue in 1983, to be closer to the water. Our family has enjoyed the character of the neighborhood ever since. My opposition is based on the purpose and intent of ZBA rules. Zoning variances are only supposed to be granted when an applicant can demonstrate hardship based on shape, soil, or topography. I fail to see a legally defensible hardship based on this application. Moreover, this essentially three-story house with a tower is too large for one of the smallest lots in the street. The proposed structure is not in keeping with the character of the neighborhood, and other abutters I've spoken to also consider it to be a detriment to our neighborhood. Hopefully, a decision acceptable to all can be reached. Martha Leahy.
Thank you very much. That was a wonderfully presented opposition, and we appreciate it. So with that, Madam Moderator, do we have any other hands raised?
I do not see any more hands raised.
All righty then. We're going to close it to the public's input into the petition. We're going to open it up to board discussion and deliberations. And we'll start with you, Mr. Martin, please.
Well, again, it's kind of a tough one. I don't have any issue again with as I said, all the back and forth relevant to the subdivision and how that is a hardship. And something needs to be done to the house. I don't think looking at 3 bedrooms is undue in any way. You know, I have some of the same reservations as the neighbors do with it. You know, the fact that this is not a very big footprint and a very tall house. I mean, it's going to kind of sticks out a little bit in terms of how it's going to look, I think. On the other hand, it does meet the height criteria, and it does meet the proper setbacks as per what's there now. So I have, I guess I have mixed emotions. I'm not thrilled with how it looks in general, kind of sticking up high and not having a big footprint. And I know that's a concern of the neighbors. On the other hand, I'm, I guess, comfortable enough with what I'm seeing relevant to the setbacks and how it otherwise conforms.
Thank you very much, Mr. Igo.
Yes, I just had a question on the setbacks, the current setbacks. Is it the representation of the petitioner that it meets the current setbacks?
It is.
Okay. Well, in terms of what they're asking for, I think everybody's in agreement that people should be able to redevelop their houses and fix them up. Everybody should be able to improve their property. We do have a bylaw, and essentially, it allows for you to go up to 35 feet. That is probably one of the problems that we have here tonight. It's at no fault of the petitioner. He's allowed to do it. It really should be addressed, however, through the planning board in a town meeting to modify that height. So when you're on smaller lots, you can only build up a certain amount. If you're on a 2-acre lot or a 1-acre lot or 40,000 square feet or what have you, 35 feet, I'm sure is fine. But if you're on a 5,000 or 6,000 square foot lot, building up to 35 feet, and I know this one's less, that may be too high. But it was the determination of the voters at town meeting to allow this to pass and have that height limit. So perhaps, and that's not for really for tonight, but for purposes of the public that's listening, you know, and the planning board, maybe they should take that up again and readdress it. But in terms of what we're being asked for here tonight, and it is a variance criteria, and it appears to me that there is somewhat of a hardship because someone who owned this property prior to the last owner conveyed away a piece of property to a neighbor, giving them a little more room or a little more land, and as a result had a negative effect on their lot, which caused it to be non-compliant. Because if this wasn't a non-compliant lot and this was a non-conforming lot, which we deal with all the time because most of the lots in town are non-conforming because they changed the zoning and they made all the minimum requirements, you know, bigger. It's very odd. I would venture to say there is not a 25,000 square foot lot south of Route 28 in Yarmouth. So, and you know, that's what the lot size, minimum lot size is here. So everything's non-conforming. But if that was a legally pre-existing non-conforming lot, I believe council is correct. I think they'd still need a special permit, but I think they qualify for the special permit. Counsel for the petitioner believes that it may be allowed as a matter of right. That would be obviously a determination by the building inspector. But be that as it may, raise and replace that's meeting your setbacks and within that footprint and goes up to the maximum allowed height, says right in the bylaw, that shall not be considered a substantial increase in the nonconformity. It's in the definition. So I think they meet the criteria, certainly for special permit. I do think it is a hardship, though, for them, if we were to tell them, you know, technically you don't qualify for that because you're a non-compliant lot. So we don't deal with non-compliant lots a lot. We did have one in the Hyannis Park area some years ago, and that was directly across the street from the entrance to Hyannis Marina. Mr. Kirker owned that, and he came before us and asked that he could build a house there, and we gave him a variance there on a non-compliant lot to build that house. And the arguments were the same, that is it really, also the argument was, is it to the benefit of the neighborhood to allow a house to just dilapidate? I would suggest that has a negative impact. So it's certainly a positive impact to allow them to improve their house. It keeps the values and protects everybody's houses in the neighborhood from devaluing. So I do think it is a hardship. I think they meet the criteria for a variance in this instance, and I would urge the board to support this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Barron.
Notwithstanding the convoluted history of this lot, going back almost 70 years, that's to me not an issue at this point. The fact that the footprint is being slightly reduced from the existing structure, even though it's proposed for 3 stories, it's still a raise and replace, literally in place. Unlike the previous matter we discussed, where there's some room to adjust that rebuilding, there's no room here for rebuilding elsewhere. And while the large size, as I made comment earlier about the other area, the general neighborhood has seen a lot of these larger structures put on existing properties, on existing lots. So in that sense, I really have no major objection to this.
Thank you, Mr. Barron. I'm just going to chime in that I think, as I agree with Mr. Igo that paragraphs 1 and 2 of the requirements for the the grant of a variance have been met to my satisfaction. But I think we need to look at the specific language of paragraph 3, which is desirable relief may be granted without either substantial detriment to the public good or nullifying or substantially derogating from the intent or purpose of this bylaw. The bylaw's intentions were pretty clear. You can build a house up to 35 feet. And while these neighbors may be concerned, that is not necessarily the representation of the public good. There are many people that live in this town, and while I understand they don't want to have views blocked, and I certainly appreciate Mr. Rosenthal's comments about parking. Those things are, again, the parking is going to be an enforcement issue. If they're parking on a street, I don't think that's allowed over there. I'm sure the police will come and do something about it, or should at least. If it's too noisy, you call the police department to come in and give noise violations. So I'm convinced that all of the criteria in a variance is met. I do believe it should be a variance personally. I'm not sure I know how it would be a special permit, but even though it's less stringent, I still think it needs a variance. And with that, I have no concern about height because, as Mr. Igo rightly points out, until it's changed by public meeting, we have a requirement. And that requirement is you cannot exceed 35 feet. It doesn't say you have to go to 35 feet. It says you may. And until that's changed in some fashion, I feel that we need to apply it. We also need to recognize that this Cape Cod.
No, we put it in.
Who's ever talking, if you could stop it? Oh, I'm sorry. Was that you, Mr. Igo?
No, that wasn't me. I never talk over you.
Well, who's ever talking,
sorry.
if you shut off your mic, I'd appreciate it. So I think with respect to Mr. Rosenthal, he brings up good points, but they're good points that are met by enforcement, town enforcement of the rights and responsibilities concerning parking in a very narrow road. I don't think the police would put up with that for a second. And so I'm going to vote favorably on this petition. With that, does the board care to have any other discussion before moving it along to a vote? Somebody prepared to make a motion?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the variance as requested with no conditions.
Is there a second to that motion?
I will say, let me just stop because there's a concern of the neighbor brought up by Attorney Wall. I'm willing to put that in as a condition that there'll be no commercial use of this property, and it shall not be used as a venue. It shall only be used for single-family purposes.
Very good.
I second that.
And do you second that, Mr. Barron, with those two conditions?
Yes.
Does the board care to have any discussion before moving along to a vote?
And then I would say that I don't know if we need to define venue. I mean,
I think commercial use does it. I think.
Okay, I mean, I'm also meeting private weddings at that house, so no weddings.
Is that acceptable to you, Mr. Barron? Specific prohibition against weddings at the site?
I don't know why that would be necessary. Sean?
Well, I don't either, actually, Tom, and I'm really, to be honest with you, we can put this condition in, but it's already, I mean, you know what, I'm strike that, no commercial use of venues at this, and if they want to take it up with the building commissioner, if they feel that there's a violation of that condition, they can. I don't think we can say weddings. I mean, someone could have a wedding at their house, I suppose.
Correct.
Yeah.
All right.
And I'm sure that consider that a commercial use.
All right, there is a motion made and seconded to grant the petition as requested by the petitioner on the sole conditions that 1, the property be used for single-family purposes only, and 2, that there be no commercial use of this property. Does the board want any discussion before moving on to a vote? Mr. Martin?
Are you asking for my vote? You're asking?
Yeah.
For my vote. Okay, aye.
Thank you. I'm sorry for clarifying that. Mr. Barron
Aye.
and Mr. Igo.
Aye.
And Mr. DeYoung says aye. It carries by a 4-0 vote. Look forward to seeing a draft decision when appropriate.
Thank you very much.
Move on. Yep, no, thank you.
Chairman,
Yep.
thank you, members.
Thank you, yep. Now we move on to the next matter, and that is petition number 4892, John W., and I hope, sir, that I'm pronouncing it right, Lobu I'm sorry, concerning property located at 236 South T Avenue, West Yarmouth. This is a property in an R25 zoning district. And this evening, our applicant is seeking a special permit under zoning bylaw 104.3.2 and 202.5, use table A1 and Q3 to construct an addition to a pre-existing non-conforming one-car garage to allow for the creation of a two-car garage, the increase to be located in a side and rear setback. Who's presenting this petition, please? If you'd let us know you're here. And
Yes, sir.
moderator, please advance them to the meeting.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Paul Tardif. I'm an attorney in Yarmouthport, and I represent the petitioners tonight, John and Lori Lobu, and I think you said it correctly. I think you have the site plan that was prepared, as well as several pictures of the property. And so, as you indicated, this is a request for a special permit just to enlarge a garage from a one-car to a two-car garage. Properties in the R25 zoning district currently has a one-story single-family structure with 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. That was built in 1960. The lot has almost 13,000 square feet. In addition to the main dwelling, there's also constructed a detached single-car garage and a small storage shed. The structure, which is the subject of this appeal, is the one-car garage, which is located 7.7 feet from the rear lot line and 8.8 feet from the side back. The building coverage for the entire property is currently at 19%. The proposal is to add 5.5 feet to the southerly side of the garage to make it a two-car garage. The garage will be used solely for storage purposes and garage uses, not for living space. The resulting structure will be located 3.2 feet from the side boundary and will not be closer to the rear boundary than what exists presently. The lot is a parallelogram so that the rear southerly corner of the lot juts out a little bit, right where the garage is located. You do have a picture, or the pictures of the property, which shows how well maintained this property is, meticulous, if you will, as well as all 4 sides of the garage. So you can see that it is in fact used that way. The garage is basically another fence. I've always argued that garages really are fences because they are protecting from sight and noise. This property happens to have a fence right next to it anyway. So I don't think anyone's going to see anything or notice anything different. There are some similar properties in the neighborhood that have done this, and I've included a picture in there for you so you can at least get an idea of what it looks like. The lot coverage is going to increase from 19 to 20%. It is going to get close to that side setback. However, based on the fact that it's tucked away in the back corner, I don't think anyone's going to have any objection to it. In fact, you do have a letter in your file from the neighbor most affected who has no objection whatsoever to it. You also have a couple of other letters, and I'll let you do with those whatever you'd like. But I don't think there's going to be any more detriment to the neighborhood based on a 5.5 foot expansion of that garage to be used as a garage. You'll just be able to put 2 cars in there instead of 1. There really is no other place to put this expansion. If you look at the way the lot is configured, there's just no way they could put it on the other side without rebuilding the entire garage. You really couldn't bring it up any forward because the lot line comes in on an angle. I just think that of of all the places they could have done this, I think this is the best, and I don't think it's going to be noticed. So with that, we'll have any questions. I know Mr. and Mrs. LeBoux are on the call, and we'll answer questions if needed. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Barron?
No, I've looked at the lot on the ground, and Mr. Tardif is correct. There's no other place to move. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Barron. Mr. Igo?
I don't have any questions. I see how where it's going to go. I will say I do have a bit of a concern building a garage up against that side lot. I mean, it's kind of, I would agree with council that it is in a back corner and it's out of the way, but it's supposed to be 20 feet off the back line, and it's supposed to be 15 off the sideline, and it's 8 feet off the back or 7 feet off the rear line. And now it's going from 8 down to 3 on that sideline. I know it's a garage, but you know, I'm struggling with that because I do think it's getting rather close. So those are just some concerns I have that I will save for discussion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Martin.
I would have Mr. Igo's same concerns. You know, I like it when these things happen, if they can at least maintain the sideline setback that was required when the lot was subdivided, which would have been 6 feet. Which it doesn't have. And my biggest concern, I mean, the neighbors are all for this, and I certainly want him, you know, it's certainly nice if he can have what he'd like to have there, and the neighbor that's most affected is okay with it, which is one of my biggest reasons for maybe being willing to say okay to this. If there's any reason that makes me not want to say okay to this is the precedent. Is everybody suddenly going to want to start building 3 feet from the sidelines? And so, question is, you know, where do you draw the line? Is it, do we look at precedent, or do we consider that kind of relief? It's looking, you know, if it was 6 feet, I'd be pretty comfortable. 3.2 feet, not as comfortable, but. All the neighbors are in favor of it. It's going to make the property look better, certainly. There's a fence there as well. I guess I'm sitting here on the fence.
Good for you, Mr. Martin. All right, listen, my immediate reaction was 3 feet because I'm concerned about firemen, fire apparatus getting back there if they needed to. But on the other side of this home, there's a 25.3 foot distance, so that somewhat alleviates my concern over there. There has been, I know I've sat on one, I can't tell you what the petition, who the petitioner was, but where we actually encouraged the petitioner with the reconstruction of his garage to an oversized garage to have access to from the rear of the property as opposed to the front of the property. I'm not sure if any of you would remember that, but it was on a very similar lot to this. And there was a rear street and a front street, and just made no sense to, particularly with the way they were going to build the garage into the backyard as opposed to the sideline here. The easiest way to deal with that was to require that a fence be erected with a gate, and that gentleman access from the back. So I don't know if that's precedent. It's a like case. It's not certainly the same fact pattern. To me, it's a pretty modest extension. I do hear Mr. Martin loud and clear. Does this open the floodgate? Well, at this point, I'm going to say that I agree with Mr. Martin. I'd like to give it a little more consideration, and that includes the content of letters which we have from Doug Campbell. I am writing to support John and his hope to add a small addition to his garage. I have known John personally for over 15 years. I believe John's modest addition will not cause any hardship to the neighbors and will increase the value of his home and the homes around him. I know if the board grants his proposal that it will be done top-notch and by the book. I urge the board to support John and his addition. Doug lives at 66 North Main Street. David Standring writes, to whom it may concern, I have been contacted by John regarding adding a small modification to his garage. Since his property abuts mine, he asked me if I had any concern for him doing so. I have no issues associated with the anticipated addition. Also, I'd like to add that John takes impeccable care of his estate, and I'm quite certain that the modification, if approved, will be well executed. As his next door neighbor, it's my considered opinion that the modification would not cause any undue impacts nor harm to the character of the neighborhood or the adjacent properties. A few years ago, he accomplished a small mudroom with brick walkways, etc., which markedly improved his property. The neighbors who routinely walk past our homes on the way to and from the beach have commented to me, and I fully agree that the improvements he's made have helped to upscale the neighborhood. So for his effort, I anticipate nothing less, as he's demonstrated pride and ownership, good property stewardship, and respect for the community. From Stephen Keniston, he writes, dated January 13, 21, I am writing in favor of my neighbor John expanding his garage. John's an excellent neighbor who has always been friendly and helpful. His house is noticeably well kept, and he continues to improve the property at all the time. I reviewed the sketches showing the minor modification to his garage he's proposing, and as a construction contractor, I'm quite certain that there will be no visual impact, nor will it degrade the character of the neighborhood in any way. I am most certain he will complete this project with great care and very keen eye. Those are the pieces of correspondence we've received. Does anybody in our audience care to speak in favor of this petition? If so, raise your hand. The moderator will recognize you.
We will start with Dave M.
Go right ahead. And if you're in support of it, try and keep your comments short, okay? Would you go ahead and unmute yourself, please? There you go.
Good evening. This is David Mangan. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Yep.
Yeah, so I'll keep it short. I know it's been kind of a long night, but I'm a neighbor of John's. I've known John for a while, and I agree with all the letters that have been sent in to you all, Mr. Chairman. And you know, it'll definitely improve the neighborhood and the home values. And again, John keeps his property immaculate and very tidy. And I, along with the other neighbors, have no issue whatsoever with the small improvement to his property. Thank you.
Sounds like you all have a weekly poker game over there. You're all such good friends. All right. Does anybody else in our audience care to speak in favor of this petition? If so, raise your hand.
Steve Meridian.
Please go ahead. Your mic is muted, sir. If you'd unmute yourself, we'll hear what you'll say.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Steve Meridian. I've known John since the 3rd grade. He's my best friend. I'm also a contractor, and I've been to the house a million times. I know the house very well. I did the plumbing in John's last addition. I know John's character very well. I know how meticulous that property is. I'm also very familiar with Yarmouth. I spent a lot of time in my youth in Yarmouth. I even have my own plank at Grays Beach, my wife and I. Boardwalk. We own property. But this property has got to be one of the most meticulous properties I've ever been to. And to the point where you can't even find a blade of grass out of place in the summertime. You want to walk on it barefoot because it's so beautiful, and the hydrangeas and just everything about it. The only other thing I want to say is John's an engineer. I'm a plumber. We're very similar and very different. It would take me 20 minutes to change my oil. It would take John 2 hours because he thinks everything through to the hill. He's thunk this garage through. He's worked on it and designed it. And I've seen the plans and the concept, and to me, it looks perfect, and I understand why he wants to do it. He's mentioned, you know, I think we want to retire here. If we can get a 2-car garage, it's a no-brainer. I'm not so sure if he doesn't get the garage, if that's going to be this final retirement place, but I think it's a great fit. I think it would be good for the neighborhood. And I know the neighbors love John because I've met most of them, and that's basically.
Thank you very much for your words. That's very nicely said. Does anybody else have their hand up wishing to speak in favor of this petition?
There's a phone number 301-455-2229.
Please go ahead. Unmute yourself and go ahead. You need to unmute yourself. You need to unmute yourself. That's why that line's across the phone. Yep.
Okay, I'm here. My name is John Frangos. I'm a resident, part-time resident in Eastham. And my wife and I bought a cottage several years ago. And one of the projects we have is to maybe expand our property. And so what we've done is traveled around the Cape and looked at other cottages about the size of ours. And driving through Yarmouth, our eyes immediately went to John and Laurie's place, and we saw them working out in the yard one day, and we stopped in and asked them about how they did what they did. Their house is beautiful. Like somebody else said, every blade of grass is in its place, flowers, and the work they've done on the back deck is just impeccable. And I know they want to retire down there, as somebody else said, and a 2-car garage makes a lot more sense when there's 2 people with cars down there living in the wintertime. So I think it's a very small move that he's trying to make, and I think the board should approve it.
Thank you, sir. Is there anybody else who wants to speak in favor of it that is a town resident, has something they'd like to say?
I don't see any other hands raised.
Anybody that wishes to speak in opposition to this petition? If so, raise your hand so the moderator may identify you.
I see none.
We close it to board, to a public input. We open it up to board discussion and deliberations, hopefully on a motion that will be made. Let's start with you, Mr. Igo.
Well, I certainly, I'm familiar with the property. I don't think there's any dispute that the man keeps a nice piece of property, and I certainly have no problem with this, you know, as far as his property is concerned. It's not really the property, it's the question of where do we draw the line with a building being too close to a lot line? I guess that's the question I have, and that's the question for the board, not just for myself. So I'm looking for some input. You know, I think his request is reasonable. I certainly have no problem with that at all. It's a very small and modest addition. It's, as council did state, it is a garage, so it's a use that's quiet. It's not like you're going to put a bedroom right up against that side setback or sideline. But I am struggling a little bit with this one because it is jammed in the corner and it's jammed on the side. And my concern is not approving this one. My concern is, are we going to say no to the neighbor to the right who's all big improvement and wants to put a 2-car garage on the left-hand side of his house? It's going to be 3 feet off his lot line. So that's the question tonight I'm posing to the board. Are we going to say no to people in the future about this? Because we're not going to be able to. They'll take it right over there to the Superior Court and get us overturned. So if they want to. So that's the question I pose to the board. So I have my concerns here. I want to say yes, but I'm going to listen to the others. I'll listen to the others and their reasons for supporting it.
Thank you, Mr. Igo. Mr. Barron.
And why this, and why, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Mr. Igo raises a good question about being close to the sideline. But the fact that there is a substantial fence there now does not, in my estimation, provide, make any visual impairment for the neighbors, for the neighbor right next door, or for neighbors in general in the area. So I really don't have any, objection to what's been proposed.
Thank you, Mr. Martin.
I have Mr. Igo's concerns in mind as well. And, trying to find, one of the biggest factors that might make me vote in favor of the petition is the fact that all the neighbors are so gung-ho okay with it, and especially the one most affected. And as Tom says, the fence there probably helps. I'm still concerned about the precedent. I'd like to say that I'd like to not make this a precedent somehow for other ones. I'm just, I guess I'm still on the fence.
We've watched some of these lots be, these smaller lots with existing structures be improved to not a zero sideline, but very close to zero sideline. We know that there are properties all over the town of Yarmouth where there is almost a zero sideline because they were probably built certainly before zoning came in. I guess it would be helpful to everybody if we could find a justification to say that this is a unique request, and it's unique for a reason that's only to this lot, as opposed to every other small lot on the Cape.
Well, since I started this controversy, I'll chime in on that and try to see if I can make it unique. We do have an existing structure that's there. The structure that we're being asked to allow to expand is already as close to the rear sideline as it's going to be. It's there. So that shouldn't really prejudice it, the fact that it's close to the rear sideline. The sideline setback, it is in the back corner of the lot. For him to move it would be a great financial hardship. There's really nowhere else to put it on the lot. It is in a back corner. I think it's away from any improvement to any houses around it that would be affected. So if a neighbor improved their house, I don't think that addition to that garage would come into play and have a negative impact. Having said that, these are going to be on a case-by-case basis, I think. I agree, Yarmouth has got a lot of small lots. As I said in the last petition, it's almost every lot is non-conforming. So it's like everybody who wants to do something usually has to come see us first. But I think the fact that it's out of the way could probably justify being so close to that lot line, that it would not affect any future development or redevelopment of any neighboring properties.
Well, as Mr. Martin says, he was on the fence. Does that help you get off that fence, Mr. Martin? And if so, which side are you falling to?
I can get off the fence in favor of the petition.
Mr. Barron, did you want to chime in with anything else?
No.
Somebody prepared to make a motion?
I would like to make a motion that we approve the petition as requested with no conditions. I know we didn't talk about it, but I presume there's no plans for anything being built upstairs. So I would say the only condition is the upstairs to this garage shall be used for storage only. If he's planning on that, he probably will have enough room to do something up there.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. We don't want to see that be used for habitable space for sure.
I'll second the petition.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barron. Anybody care to have any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion made by Mr. Igo to grant the permission, the requested relief, subject to the only condition that the second floor not be used, the second floor of the garage not be used for habitable space and only be used for storage. Let's start with Mr. Martin. Mr. Martin,
Aye.
Mr. Igo,
Aye.
Mr. Barron,
Aye.
and DeYoung says aye, carries 4-0. I'll look forward to a draft decision.
Thank you, gentlemen. Have a good night.
Thank you. You too. We're
Thank
going to
you
move
very
on
much.
to our last matter here. Damn thing keeps shutting off on me.
Steve, was the original petitioner ever gotten back on the online? Do we know?
Oh, Quigley?
Yeah.
Yes, Quigley is here.
Okay. All right, why don't we bring that one forward? Thank you, Mr. Martin, for keeping me on my toes.
Promoted Paula Quigley to panelist.
Thank you. You have to unmute yourself, Ms. Quigley. Thank you. Why don't you go ahead and tell us all about your petition, please?
Okay, I'm seeking a petition to create an in-law setup in my basement. It's already a finished basement. So I'd have to add in like a shower, a kitchen run, and walkout as opposed to a bulkhead.
Okay. Anything else you want to tell us? Pretty simple, straightforward, huh?
Yeah, pretty simple.
Okay. Mr. Barron, any questions?
No, I've been by the site. Doesn't, it's a hilly site. There isn't much leeway for other than what's been proposed. And so I have no further questions.
Mr. Igo?
Yes. Who's going to live there?
My son.
Okay. And is it 800 square feet or less?
Yes.
Okay. And is there going to be adequate parking outside for an extra car?
Yeah, there's several spots. I widened the driveway already.
Okay.
So
All right. And have you spoke with the building department at all about having two forms of egress and everything, and they're all set with that? Or you gotta go?
Yep. That's why I was gonna do the walkout and, make sure that we had that. And there's the upstairs egress as well.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Martin.
No, I don't think I have any questions. It appears to meet all the requirements of a family related apartment, and as long as she meets all the guidelines required, I should be pleased with the result here.
Well, the only thing I have is to understand, is this your primary residence, Ms. Quigley?
Yes, it is.
All right, so your presence down in Florida is not because you're living down there full time?
I don't have a place in Florida.
Oh, I thought you were in Florida, and that's why we had to.
No, that
Oh.
was just me struggling with Zoom and couldn't understand why I couldn't log on with Zoom. So I apologize for that, and thank you for your patience.
Yeah, I was talking about back on March 11, but
No,
okay,
no,
so
I
you
live
occupy the
year-round.
home. Your son is gonna live within it. You've got to comply certainly with all the building code requirements, and you understand the requirements for a family-related apartment. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
You have to sign an affidavit. You have to sign a couple of statements under oath
Yeah,
to permit
which
you.
I did.
Oh, that's fine. I'm very happy you did. I'm not suggesting you didn't, but
Okay.
I'm just telling you that has to be done annually. Okay.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. And so they'll keep you informed as best they can, but you ought to put it on your calendar. Make sure after December 31, you reconfirm the presence of family member in that apartment, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Does anybody in our audience care to speak in favor or in opposition to this petition? If so, raise your hand. Go ahead, just turn the other on.
I see no hands.
All right. So that then closes it to the public input on the petition. We now open it up to board discussions. Do you have any questions? Do you have anything you'd like to say, Mr. Martin, Mr. Igo, Mr. Barron? Go free for all. Somebody prepared to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve petition number 4888, subject to the petitioner meeting all the requirements for a family-related apartment.
Second,
Sorry. All right. So anybody want to have any discussion on that motion before proceeding along to a vote? Seeing
The
none?
only comment I would make, Mr. Chairman, is that I believe the petitioner has demonstrated that she's met the criteria under section 407-2. And that's subsections 1 through 9.
All right.
Fine.
Excuse me, always good to put findings on the record. Thank you, Mr. Igo. Mr. Igo, your vote.
Aye.
Mr. Barron, your vote.
aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
And DeYoung says aye, carries 4-0. A decision will be drafted, Ms. Quigley. That decision will be filed with the town clerk's office. 20 days must elapse before that decision is considered final. Once that time has elapsed, assuming nobody appeals, you would then bring the decision to the Barnstable Registry of Deeds and cause it to be recorded, and proof of it being recorded returned to our board secretary. Thank you. Yes, she's gone. Brings us to our last matter. And that's good because my voice is quitting. Catherine Ferrazzi of 22 Setauket Road, Yarmouthport. Property in an R40 zoning district, and our applicant is seeking a special permit under 104.3.2, subparagraph 2, or a variance under 203.5. Excuse me. For side setback relief to construct an addition on a non-conforming lot encroaching into the side setbacks. Go ahead, tell us all about it.
Okay, well.
Who are you first and where do you live?
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Catherine Ferrazzi. I'm at 22 Setauket Road in Yarmouthport. It's a little 912 square foot ranch, which was just fabulous for myself until I got remarried a few years ago. So we are trying to make this our future retirement home, our together home. And one of the things we wanted to do was add another garage. We have a single car garage. So it started with the single car garage and enclosing the deck behind the house. I have a hot tub out there, and I'm getting tired of shoveling to go out there. So I thought, well, if we're doing the garage, let's do, enclose it and make it a sunroom so I can use it year round. And of course, add AC. Now, once we started looking at the cost to do all of that, we said, well, God, we're going to put all that money into the house and have a 2-car garage. And we still have 2 tiny bedrooms that are 11.5 feet by 11.5 feet. So I am a realtor. I also have looked around at other houses and weighed the cost benefits of moving to a home that will suit us better. But then we ultimately decided we really like where we are. So we thought we would, because the adding on to the garage gives us, I guess, a sunroom that is exorbitantly large. Why don't we move the second bedroom over there and with the sunroom behind the garage? and turn the 2 small bedrooms into 1 bedroom. So we'd have an adequate room where we can actually fit a queen bed in and a dresser at the same time. So looking at after the architect drew up the plans, we realized what we'd like to do just puts us 17 feet away from my neighbor off to my left if we're standing in the street looking at the house. And at the back of the foundation, I believe it's 16.7 feet, and we should have 20 feet on that setback. I've got plenty of room on every other side of the home, but the side where we need the space does encroach, into that 20-foot requirement. Before I approached the Old Kings Highway with the plans, I did drop off a set of plans to my neighbor on that side because she is the one who is the most affected by this. And she has no problems with it. Her main thing was, you're not going to take my fence down or anything, are you? Because there is a fence over there. And so I know I have her support and the support of my neighbor on the other side as well. Aside from that, let's see, also there's storage underneath the addition so that we don't have to get another permit for a shed. So we're trying to maximize whatever we have. Other than that, any questions from any of you, I'm happy to answer. Oh, I'm sorry.
Please forgive me. Here I am all night long. And what do? I go and shut my mic off. I apologize. And
Okay, it's a long night.
Kind of look at him, he's saying, turn the damn thing on. All right. Thank you for your comments. They were very nice and very succinct. Mr. Barron, any questions about petition?
No, I visited the lot, and I fully understand the proposal. The encroachment on the side is fairly small. Other than that, I have no comment.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Igo?
I agree with Mr. Barron. I think this is a modest proposal. I think there's adequate distance on those setbacks. They're over there, I believe, in an R40 zoning district. Could be very tough to meet your setbacks over there. I saw the plans. They look very nice, very tastefully done. I think it's going to be a very nice improvement. And so I plan on supporting this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Martin, please.
Yeah, it's a fairly minimal request. I don't think I have any issue. Too bad you didn't have as much land on this side of the house as you had on the other side of the house. You wouldn't need any really. I think it's fine. And just looking at the elevation, just in terms of the looks of the house, and this may be just the way the plan's done up, but is there going to be any kind of line, so to speak, or a little setback to the garage from the main house? Because
no,
straight line.
Correct. It's one long line. And I also didn't like the appearance of that myself, which is why we decided to add the little shed dormer over the garage for some that's truly just for architectural interest. And also to add the portico over the front door to somewhat break up that whole appearance as well. I also did not want just a straight line all the way through. So trying to keep the budget, but
But you may even do it with just kind of a decorative 2x4 or something that kind of breaks it up to look from the street like there's a break there.
Do you mean in between the 2 garage doors?
Oh no, to the right of the 2 garage, to the right of the garage, as if the garage was set back a little from the main body of the house. Just a suggestion in terms of how it would look for to break up that long line, along with what you're also planning with the dormers and the portico over the front door. I think that would help. But in other words, if you look, it can be flush. It's just a board that would go on there that makes it look like there's a setback to that garage. just a
Mhm.
suggestion. But I have no issues with what you're asking for.
So, that's an excellent suggestion. We're not going to require you to do it, but, it creates the illusion of a broken front, but by they're doing that.
Yeah, I
Particularly,
think. Mhm.
particularly since you have siding that runs linearly, laterally rather. And that might help to break it up a bit. Okay.
Mhm.
I have no questions, but I can see that Mr. Barron does. And so we're going to go to Mr. Barron.
Following what Dick said, not necessarily just a board or something. I would suggest something decorative, like a trellis or something with some shape to it. A little bit of art involved might be practical as well. It's certainly not a requirement, but just an idea.
Madam Moderator, could you invite anybody in our audience who cares to speak in favor or against this petition to raise their hand and let us know who they are so they can we can listen to them.
I am not seeing any hands raised.
Hallelujah. Praise the Lord. All right, so now we close it to the public input into the petition, and we now open it up to board discussions, deliberations, and any questions you may still have of the petition. Mr. Martin, is anybody prepared to make a motion?
I have no further questions. I'll make a motion if you want.
Sure, go right ahead.
Yeah, I'll vote to approve petition number 4893 as requested.
Is there a second?
Second.
The motion's been made by Mr. Martin and seconded by, I'm so sorry, I've got this cough now becoming rampant. Second by Mr. Barron to approve the petition without conditions. Mr.
Correct.
Barron,
Correct. Aye.
Mr. Igo,
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
And based upon the belief that this will not cause any undue hazard, nuisance, nor congestion in the neighborhood of town, or change or be a detriment to the character of the neighborhood of town, I say aye as well. It therefore carries on a 4-0 vote. As quick as I can, I will draft a decision. The decision will be filed with the town clerk's office. Once filed, 20 days must elapse before you can do anything. It's a technical waiting period. And once that time elapses, you have to bring the permit to the Barnstable Registry of Deeds and record it. Okay?
Okay. I do have one question. If I am, I know your suggestion to do something to break up between the garage and the home. Do I have to go back to the Old Kings Highway for approval for that?
Yes.
They've already
point.
approved the design already. I was told to go to them for you.
Well, that's just our that's just the
Okay.
suggestion a couple of us echo.
I think
It's not a mandate.
Yeah, Tom's suggestion on the trellis, I think you can probably do without any.
Yeah, I'll think of
Thank
something.
you. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great.
Thank you.
Yeah. There being no further business on our agenda, somebody's going to move to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
And is there going to be a second?
Second.
Very good. All those in favor say aye.
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 I know that's not a roll call vote, but frankly, I don't care. I got to go get something to alleviate this.
Go have a cough drop.
Thank you all.
All right. Good night,
Great to
everybody.
see ya.
Good night, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Don.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you, John.